Nice to have you.
Hey, nice to be here. Finally, bro.
Yeah. So 2 things people should know about you before they know anything else is that you made this table.
I did. Yeah. You asked me to make it. You gave me 36 hours. I instantly regretted saying yes. And then the measurements you gave me were some bizarre, like 7 feet wide by 9 feet long. And I was just stressing out about getting it done. And then you came over with your
Cameron Bertuzzi,
your fashion guy. And he was like, this won't work. And then we had a
Sorry, we love Cameron, just in case that felt like that was a complete... That's how it works.
He was like, no, this will not work. You know, it was something like that.
Yeah, that's right. So it was probably double the size.
Yeah, it was big. And then...
You put your sweat into this. And like,
then
you
I
just
came
take half of
over
it
and he
away.
was like, take 3 more off. And
why does he sound like that?
because you kept calling
He's
him
not
you kept
effeminate.
calling him your fashion guy. I'm not trying to do effeminate. I'm trying to do weird.
Okay.
Trying to do weird. You know, he's like a weird, like stylish guy.
He's a stylish guy.
Yeah.
That just seems weird to you because you're stylish, but in more of a gangster kind of way.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I think that's a fair assessment. And then once I got here, after cutting it twice, I had to cut it again to like get it out of the elevator or to get it in here or something. I was in here with a freaking handsaw, duct taping it together. I mean, I'm amazed it's still standing, but it still needs to be touched up a little bit. But it is a good table, bro.
It's a great table. People always say it's a good table.
I bet they do, bro.
Now, your point, speaking about like things that won't interest anybody, but it interests me. Your point was really good that when people try to make something look antique, they make you say it. They make the mistake.
Well, yeah, it's just like I think sometimes, you know, when you get like on Etsy or that kind of stuff, which I like, I'm a fan of. But like sometimes it's just like every piece is distressed equally and it just looks cheesy. Not to say that this doesn't look cheesy. Someone could probably criticize this table, but you know, really there's like with certain sections that are like super worn down or banged up and others that aren't. You know, so when I was banging this up, since I had 36 hours to not find real reclaimed wood, I burn it. I had a bag full of chains, a bag full of nails. I had an axe. I just tried to bang it up, you know, hard in spots, and got it done.
It looks good.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, you gave me this first-class relic of Thomas Aquinas.
I did, and I told you one thing when I gave it to you is like, all I want is to be famous. I want to be on the show.
Yeah.
You promised me within a week I'll be on the show, and then here's the
4
relics
months later,
here.
5 months later,
right.
6 months later.
It's shameful, but got the relic from a
Russian
Orthodox priest who this wasn't the first time he gave us a relic. In fact, a couple of years ago he said, he's like, I want to give you guys some relics, and he's like, you can have a pick. You could have Thomas Aquinas or Saint Teresa, Little Flower.
Yeah,
and it was a big choice, you know. Yeah. But to me, you know, I thought the less pretentious choice would be St. Teresa Little Flower.
Okay.
That's why I left this one for you.
I missed it. What?
Less pretentious. Like I thought, like having like St. Thomas Aquinas.
Because I'm pretentious.
Like,
Got it. Yeah.
Anyway, no, I picked St. Teresa Little Flower because like we're a missionary family, and she was a missionary.
So he gave you both of them?
No, he gave it. So I got St. Teresa Little Flower, and that's how I knew he had Thomas Aquinas.
Okay.
So then, like when you were moving here, and you were like, "Oh, it's my dream to get Thomas Aquinas," we were like, "We should just ask Father Theo for the Thomas Aquinas."
Yeah.
So he told him about you, and he's like, you know, he's an old guy, and honestly, he's a sick old man. Not sick like he's a pervert or something, but like he's just old and he's sick, and he's like always wanting to get rid of his stuff, and so we told him about you. He's like, "Oh, I would love that," you know. So
wow.
he was all about.
And he wanted to do it anonymously, isn't that right?
Yeah, well, I guess he's not anonymous anymore.
Oh, you haven't said his name
told
yet,
him,
did you, Father
Theo Chomsky. Thank you, Father.
Thank you, Father Theo Chomsky.
No, yeah, he's just a sweet guy. He's always giving stuff to like monasteries.
Why is that? Is it just
like
Western saints he gives away, or?
I don't know how he has so many like crosses and relics and stuff like that, but people have given them to him, and he like loves to give stuff away. Like he would come over our house and be like, he'd love to give us like groceries, you know. Wow. But then the other thing, he'd be like, I have this old wheelbarrow I want to give to you, and I always be like, yeah, heck yeah,
I don't
man.
Want it, but thanks.
Yeah, dude, I wanted it, man. I'm like, I'll take it, dude, you know. And So he's just like that, and the Relic is just another thing, man. He's a sweet old man.
I was in Pittsburgh at Holy Trinity Ukrainian Catholic Church, and somebody pointed out that they knew that priest, and they spoke really highly of him. But I was in Scott's library walking around, Scott Hahn, and I said to him, yeah, because, okay, back up. I got a Therese of Lisieux first-class relic, and the way I got it was thus. I was chatting with a priest at a parish I was about to speak at, and he said, hey, I just got like a bunch of relics, first-class relics in. And for those Protestants who are watching right now, we're talking about like bone, fragments of bone from saints, which is weird, right? Because as Catholics, we're like, respect the body until you're dead, and then we throw you in the chipper and then disperse you around the world in little gold things. Bit weird. So he said he got all these relics in, and I've been wanting a relic, and I'm like, how come all these Catholics I know have first-class relics, and I don't have a first-class relic? So he said, I got all these relics in. I just looked at him, I went, give me one. And he went, okay. I went, sweet, that's how you do it. So I just started to become a little bit more bold in my relic seeking. So I was in Scott's library, and I'm like, hey, you know anybody who'd have a first-class relic of Thomas Aquinas I could have? And he's like, I wouldn't trust or respect the man who would part with it.
Well, I thought that was a good answer. You told me that before, and I always think that Scott Hahn doesn't respect me. Did you tell him I gave you the...
No, because this was before.
Okay.
I was looking for one.
Just don't tell him. Don't ever tell him.
Yes,
I'm sure he doesn't watch this show.
No, that's right. But anyway, so what happened was you came over to my house, and you had an envelope, and you gave me this thing. Because you said you had something you wanted to give to me, and my wife said, you're going to love this thing. And I'm like, I don't know what this thing could possibly be.
What things were you thinking it could be?
I don't know, because she said you were going to love it. And I thought, I don't think Bob has anything he could give me that I'd be that excited about. Yeah.
Wow, that's a backhanded insult.
So she gave me an envelope, and I was feeling it. And I thought, this is a frigging beer top. It's a bottle top.
Yeah, that's a good guess.
That's what it felt like. Yeah. I'm like, okay, I guess maybe it's like an Australian beer top, and my wife thought that this would have sentimental value. So that's what I'm thinking as I open this envelope and pull it out. I'm thinking, oh, thanks, Bob, this is great. And I pull it out, and it's a first-class relic of Thomas Aquinas. I don't think I could speak for about a minute.
Yeah, it was awesome, bro.
It was really kind of you.
And then we had like the document in Latin.
Yeah, I have it right there. That's still in the envelope, envelope,
cool.
Envelope.
I say envelope.
Yeah, I think in Australia they say envelope. I get confused these days.
Well, I don't know. I think I say envelope. But it's a good question, actually.
But once I ask you, you forget.
Then I'm going to think about it all day. I'm going to beat myself up about the answer to this later.
Stupid. I can't believe I said envelope. But anyway, so thanks so much for that.
Yeah, man. It's good to see it here in that cool. Where'd you get that reliquary?
I got that reliquary. Actually, I have a. Speaking of first-class relics, this was a terrible thing happened. So I used to work for a bloke who runs a ministry called Stewardship and Mission of Faith.
Okay.
And he was kind enough to give me a first-class relic of Padre Pio. And it came with that reliquary. By the way, we no longer have any Protestants watching this show.
Yeah,
it's been like 10 minutes, and there's no way.
I don't think you ever had any, but it's just good to,
it's good to pretend.
Hope. Yeah.
So anyway, so he gives this to me, and I have to fly home with it. So I don't know what to do with it. I wanted to be careful with it, obviously. So I took the relic out in the little circular thing, for lack of a better word.
That's the name.
And I wrapped it in bubble wrap, and I got home, and I unwrap it, and the fragment of bone is no longer on it.
Bro.
Now I know people, they'll carry their first-class relics around with them.
Yeah.
But for some reason, it got dislodged from the glue or whatever that's on the thing.
Good.
So what do you do? What do you do? Like, you're in a predicament now. Either you leave it as is, because it's sealed with wax to show its authenticity in the back, right? So do I just keep it like that with the seal on and say, well, I know you can't see it, it's in there somewhere, or do you cut it open and go looking for it? What do you do?
I think I would have left it sealed.
Right. I should have done that.
But you cut it open.
I cut it open. I don't know why I did it.
I don't think it matters. Dust to dust, right, man? It's dust somewhere now. I mean,
so I cut it open, and I'm going through, but it's kind of cool to like touch Padre Pio's bone. I was thinking that too. And I think I found it, and I tried to put it back on, and then I shut it up again. So I have Padre Pio.
You still have it? Okay.
Yeah, still have it. But it's cut open in the back. So.
All's well that ends well.
Anyway, that's how I got the reliquary.
I think everyone's got like a Padre Pio. I feel like the most common relic is Padre Pio.
Yeah.
Everyone's like,
The
I
true-
got a
the
piece
true
of a
cross.
glove or something that was touched with a piece of his glove or something like that.
Yeah.
Not that, I mean, Padre Pio's cool, but.
Remember when I came over to your house and you had that Native American image?
Yes.
And I'm like, who's this?
Why'd you make the face like you don't like Native Americans?
That's
You're
not what I said. I love Native Americans. Listen, Bob, I am an immigrant to this country. You have no idea what it's like to be me, okay? So in the system of oppressed people, sure, yeah, I am above Native Americans, but you're above me, okay, with your white Americanness. Yeah. So anyway, I asked, like, what's this Native American image? And you said it was a saint or something.
Yeah, I'd probably say it was Saint Kateri Tekakwitha.
Yeah, I don't know. But apparently it turns out you got it from TK Maxx.
Yeah. No, not... First of all, it's TJ Maxx.
Okay. In Ireland, it's TK Maxx.
Really?
Isn't that funny?
Wow, that's so funny.
I guess seriously, because
I didn't get it from TJ Maxx for the record. I printed it off at work on Franciscan's budget. I got it off of Google.
So yeah.
But yeah, that was a cool image. Didn't you, when you walked in, you're like, dude, that looks
great
cool.
Image. I love it. Yeah.
I love Native American imagery.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah, thanks.
I'm not opposed to it. I love,
that's not what your face
everybody.
said. That's not what your face said. Your face was like this.
It's, yep. Good. All right.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you noticing it.
All right, let's talk about tattoos.
Okay.
How many tattoos do you have?
Well, I want to just, before I get into that, you have a tattoo, right? I know you don't like to show underneath your cashmere outfit, but you do have a tattoo.
I have a tattoo.
Right, so anything you say will have to be taken in perspective, context to that tattoo.
Yep.
And I also know that, like, back in the day when you worked for Catholic Answers, we talked about this a little bit. So I feel like safe to disclose like any information about tattoos because I know you have a tattoo.
That's right.
Because I know you don't hate me. You're in the club. I don't know how many tattoos I have. I really don't. I have a lot of tattoos.
Well, and then you have all these little star things
all
on
the
your
little
arm.
stars. Yeah, do those count? I don't know. But I have
that'd be
tattoos
that'd
almost
be cool
everywhere.
one day, just to have Kate count them.
Count stars?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, everything. I mean, Kate, you just,
count
lay
all my
in your
tattoos.
birthday suit and have her count.
It's a good idea. Maybe we'll do that. Maybe
It'll be a date night.
Yeah, we're gonna have to get the air conditioners out because it's gonna get hot if she has to do that. But I don't know. I have a lot of tattoos and I'm always adding more. But I love tattoos. It's so I work. Most of my life has been working with inner city kids, and it's been a great conversation piece, to say nothing else. Honest to God, like there's been so many times where I'm literally on the streets and I start a conversation with someone, or in a gas station or in projects, whatever, and start to talk with someone about tattoos, and they or tattoos as
tattoos.
I love when I have a friend from New Zealand. She always says tattoos. I love it. But I really like tattoos. It's funny because I got my first tattoo was my grandfather's name.
Okay.
And this is a good thing too, because I've done a lot of youth ministry, and sometimes you get some concerned parent and they will say like, well, what am I gonna say to my son who wants tattoos now because you have them?
Wait, is this Cameron Batuzzi saying this to you?
That's good, dude. No. This is a concerned parent, which Cameron probably is a concerned parent.
I'm sure he loves his kids.
But anyway, and I always say, I didn't get my first tattoo. How old do you think I was when I got my first tattoo?
I would think in college.
25.
Yeah. Okay.
After college. Okay. So I was 25. I'm the oldest of my three brothers, or my two brothers, three of us. And I said I would wait till my youngest brother turned 18 and we'll get my grandfather's name. And I was getting the name. This is in Philly, where I'm from, and the woman who was tattooing me said, she's like, these are pretty addictive. Like I bet I'll see you again. And I was like, I think I'm a one tattoo kind of a guy. That's what I said. I think and I don't think it's just said that they're addictive. It's just, this is permanent. I feel like I get addicted or passionate about anything I do. Like, like I feel like if I'm into welding or gardening or table, it's like all I think about. This just happens to be permanent,
Do you typically, though, get into something very intensely and then move on?
Yes. So and it's not like I won't, like, for instance, like tattoos, I still like them, but I'll get them. My daughter's boyfriend does tattoos now, and so he'll text me once in a while. You want to do a tattoo tonight? I'll say, sure. I mean, they're free. He's just doing my legs. I don't care.
Is that where he's done them, just on your legs? I was going to ask you to show him. Is he any good?
He's pretty good.
Yeah?
Yeah, you guys want to see one?
I mean, I don't know. We could try.
All right.
Here we go.
Has anyone ever put their leg on the table
This is the
before?
first time someone's ever put their leg.
So, like he has...
I'm just impressed with how flexible you are.
Yeah, thank you. So, like this bulldog and stuff. Yeah, he did all these like on my a lot of these on my leg here. Now, the cool thing is he started with...
I would like you to have that leg up for the entirety of the interview.
Well, maybe I will, bro. I'm about to put the other one up on this side of the mic, bro. But... he started doing. First of all, look at these socks. I didn't think I'd have to show. I didn't think I'd have to show them on the podcast. But anyway, no, they're mine. I just got them as a Christmas gift yesterday. They're called Polar Degree or something like that.
I'm impressed they fit within that shoe. I would think you'd have to get a size
they were tight,
up.
to be honest. They were tight. But anyway, what I was going to say is he started doing what was called stick and poke, which is like a prison tattoo. You get a needle and you stick it in some ink. It could be from ink from a pen or whatever. And you do like this. You just poke. You're lighting that because my feet stunk.
Yeah,
I thought you were lighting the candle.
Cigar smell was less offensive.
But anyway, so he started doing that. Point being in all of this is, now it's not as much as something I think about all the time. Like I think when I was first getting tattoos, and you're brushing your teeth or something, you're looking at your chest or your stomach, your arm, and you're like, oh, symmetry. I'd like to get something over here, or I'd like to fill in this gap, or it'd be cool. And I was definitely much more obsessed with it then. Now it's like, it's still fun. I still like tattoos. I love when a college student, I work at Franciscan, and when a college student shows me a new tattoo, it's fun to enter into that. But it's not something I necessarily obsess about as much, but it's permanent, so it's like, it doesn't matter. It's there.
I feel like tattoos, stay with me here, are like your child's names. You never want to admit that it was a mistake.
Oh, wow.
Or that you'd get it, you'd have a different name if you could do it all over again. It's like, I think with tattoos, everyone's like, no, and they have to talk about it like it means a lot to them because it's permanent. And so it's that, or this was a mistake. I don't think I would get that. I think I would have not.
Well, here's the problem is you should just get more.
Oh, okay.
I got on New Year's Eve last year, I got a crazy looking cat holding a knife. I thought it was funny.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. I have so many tattoos.
It's
just another, it's just like a doodle, on the temple. And so
doodle on the temple.
A doodle on the temple. So maybe if you got a little crazy cat holding a knife next to that Marian image. Marian, yeah. Maybe you'd be like, oh, I don't feel so bad about this one anymore. Now I feel bad about the cat holding a knife.
I see what you mean.
But
is it possible? Because you said in the beginning, you symmetry, right? And I think that's appropriate. Like in the beginning, you want to have it like that, and then you just fill it in. But have you ever seen people have as many tattoos as you have, but it looks bad? In the sense of not
if you
symmetrical
go to
and
the
out of
Toronto
place.
pool in the summer, if you live in the tri-state area, the Toronto pool, I tell anyone I know who's around here, I say, before you get a tattoo, go to the Toronto pool.
Just so
spend
everybody
the day
knows.
there, look
it's
around.
Like 15 minutes from here, Stu.
Because you go to the pool and you look around and you're like, and now this is someone with tattoos, and I look at these people that are middle-aged like me, and I think, oh my gosh, they look so horrible, dude, and then I think, I'm like, thank God my tattoos don't look like that. But then I think, they're probably saying the same thing about me, so you got to know, one, no matter how cool you think your tattoo is going to look, you're still going to kind of look like that, unless you're like a model, or, you're shredded, then it'll look cool, whatever you have. But when you go there, it's like the Tasmanian devil, bench pressing next to something in Chinese. And,
right. Barbed wire.
Yeah. So, yes, I think those look... but honestly, it gets to a certain point where it looks so bad that it almost looks awesome. I've been there too. Where I have a friend who used to work up at the university, and he has a tattoo that he snuck out when he was 14. It's such a bad tattoo. Okay, so I don't want to put his name out there, Bobby Aborn, but he had a clover, like a four leaf clover.
Because he's Irish, isn't he?
Yeah, he's Irish. But he grew up in Boston, and he snuck. It was still illegal in Massachusetts to get tattoos when he was a kid.
Really?
Okay, so even in New York, it was illegal. DC, there were parts it was illegal, in the 80s and 90s, and so he went to New Hampshire. They skipped school. He had a fake ID. He was 14. Somehow they believe his fake ID, which shows, how manly he is. And him and his homeboys, like they all decided to get the boys. That was what they called themselves. They were like a group of ruffians, the boys. I think it has a Z or maybe it has an S. I don't remember, but it's like within the clover. And he gets his tattoo, the boys, okay, on his arm, and it looks so bad now. It's all starting to deteriorate, and it's not like that well done. But and it's within tribal stuff that he got later. And but the worst part is all of his friends after he got it were like, I'm not getting it. Like they all chickened out. So I told him now 25 years later, a couple years ago, I was like, dude, I'll get it. Wow. So I went and we got it down the road here.
Did he get another one?
No, I just got the boys.
Okay.
I got the tattoo, and he's like, I've been waiting 25 years for this,
my gosh.
But at that point, like that tattoo, the story was so epic, and the craftsmanship was so bad that it's like cool, like, so I do think there's a like an arc where it's so bad it becomes awesome, like. So to answer your original question, yes, I've seen people with tons of tattoos that look bad.
Well, who I'm thinking of is our mate who we used to speak at the conferences with.
Hickman?
No. Gosh, why is his name escaping me? He lives on a farm now.
Oh, Chris Paget.
I love Chris Paget.
But you hate his tattoos?
No, I just love him. He is so beautiful.
Yeah, but he's the prime
I don't know what I'm trying to
example.
say. Like before we get to the tattoo, just so I can try to finish this incoherent thought. Whenever I'm around him, I feel like my mess is okay. You know what I mean? He's just a messy, beautiful guy.
Yeah, no, he totally is. But you brought him up in the context of, I was like, yeah,
let's
someone who looks horrible. You're like, who I'm thinking of.
No, but here's why I asked.
You wanted to compliment him before you trashed him.
Yeah,
this is going to be clickbait.
True.
Matt Fradd trashes Chris Paget.
Because you like you look cooler than Chris Paget. Right? So, because Chris is like, he's like, he doesn't look like the kind of guy who would have tattoos everywhere. You kind of do. So what I'm asking you is, because he's got a ton of tattoos like you now, and he started off later, and I'm sure he asked for a ton of advice. Is he able to pull it off, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, honestly, in a certain sense, I think the cool thing about tattoos or culture in general is just like, it's almost like, the weirder you are, like the more it works in a certain sense. That's why I think Chris, like everything you said about him, I agree. Like he's so authentic and authentically bizarre, that this kind of fits his bizarre life, and the one thing I remember thinking about him, which I was nervous about when he started getting tattoos, is within like the first tattoo he got, within like 3 months, he was getting his hands tattooed, and I was like,
oh wow, first one?
No, it wasn't his first one, but like so he got his first one within 3 months from there. He's getting his, I don't know if that's the exact timeline, but he immediately was, I get that. I really, like I told you, like that's how I am, but I also think that that's dangerous because you're making a lot of permanent decisions quickly, and it just might be better to spread them out.
Like, so like getting married in Vegas.
I have tattoos everywhere, but it's been over 20 years. I'm not saying it makes it more right or more aesthetically pleasing, but it does. Yeah, I guess it is a little like getting married in Vegas. But
what's your response to those who would object? First of all, what do you think the best argument against tattoos is? From a Christian perspective,
your answer? Sure. Well, first thing I would say is this: I've had lots of people come up after, like I used to do a lot more talks and music and stuff, and people would come up. A lot of times it'd be a mom, but a lot of times it'd also be a kid who wanted to know what to tell his mom or, whatever. And the first thing I would always say is like, dude, I could be wrong. Like I think you can. I really do think you can make an argument why not to get covered in tattoos, and that's a totally.
But what is that argument?
Well, I just prudence. Like what we like, our body is not important.
Right.
We don't believe that like only the soul matters. The body matters. All these things matter.
Yeah.
And I think there could just be like a sense of like, well,
I've heard people say like you wouldn't put a bumper sticker on a Ferrari.
Yeah, but. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think like everything like that could limp a little bit. It's kind of corny. Like I just feel like there's things like people throw out real quickly that like I think I get it why you're saying that, but like the one thing, like, you know, like the Levitical law stuff, you know, like you shall not, but we don't follow Levitical law anymore. You know what I mean? Like we don't, when a woman is menstruating, we don't tie her to a tree or whatever it says to do. You know what I mean? So if someone is like living by that, then they need to be doing that. You know, it's just like that's a little silly to me.
That's fair.
But at the same point, I guess the argument, not for it, but the argument that I would say
why it's acceptable. Why it's something you could do.
Is so John Paul II, who's one of my heroes.
He had great tats.
He had great tattoos. You know, tattoos. And no. But he has this quote that I use for just about everything. It's like my ranch dressing. I just use it for anything I need it. But he says, if the church holds back, Father Stanford Toon introduced me to this line. He says, if the church holds back from culture, then the gospel falls silent. You know, and so I also did like hip hop music, you know, and sometimes people would think that was weird, and it was weird. I mean, like you could even say it was dumb, you know, but like to me, I'd say like, look, I have a missionary heart. I think the church has a missionary heart. It says in the Catechism in the first section that the church in her essence, is missionary. You know, so what does that mean? It means that we embrace culture. It means that we don't avoid culture. We don't demonize culture. In fact, when we look at the missionary life of the church, those are the times that the church has been in error, like when it's just demonized culture or tried to just impose one culture as only, you know, like kind of like you have to look like Ned Flanders and that's the only way, you know. But that's not like how we view evangelization correctly as Catholics and Christians. But, you know, like, so he says, if the church holds back from culture, then the gospel falls silent. And so really, like to me, like I love that in the sense of, that's fine. Like if, you know, like someone's not going to do Christian hip hop or use this type of, you know, culture or art or tattoos or whatever. And I'm not saying all my tattoos are to evangelize, but a lot of them have to do with Jesus. A lot of them, like I could tell a story of Peter's conversion, or I could tell a story, you know, from a scripture quote or whatever. And it's just a way that I feel like the Spirit is able to breathe into culture, into something that I don't think is intrinsically wrong. And
No,
so
it's not.
that's what I guess I feel like there's a fine line when anyone gets too hung up on it, because they start saying like, okay, well, let's assume tattoos are all wrong. Okay, well, what about one tattoo? What about piercing your ears? Well, yeah, you can't do it 18 times. Well, what about one time? You know, like, well, that's weird in certain parts of the world. What about a bigger hole in your ear? You know, like, you know, like what, like there's just certain cultural norms that I think it's easy for us to say like, well, this is intrinsically right, or this is intrinsically wrong. And sometimes it's just like, no, this is our culture. Or, you know, like when we did evangelization wrong, sometimes missionary wise, it's just like we try to institute a white man's culture view of religion, you know, like, and we now know that that's not, you know, like what the correct way of doing it. Or like when we look at our saint, you know, like saints in the church, like Saint Isaac Jogues with Vagabond Missions, that's, you know, our patron saint. You know, you think like, here's a guy who came over and got involved in Native American culture, and he somehow raised up Christianity in a world where he didn't have Rosetta Stone or something to look up, well, what do Iroquois Indians do, or what, you know, but he entered into it and he found a way to breathe the Spirit into it, breathe the gospel into it. And so, I know that's...
No, I think you're right. If I could, I mean, one of the things I always say on the show is, like, a faithful Catholic isn't only one who submits to what the church teaches authoritatively. A faithful Catholic also ought not to demand uniformity where the church allows diversity of opinion or custom. So you meet these people and they'll get hung up on something that isn't essential, and they'll start demanding that you engage in their devotion because they've gotten a lot out of it. So they talk about it as if it's divine revelation. And we shouldn't do that.
I mean, the other thing is like, let's take the opposite. Like, imagine it is wrong. I'm wrong. Tattoos are wrong, or whatever. Okay, well, at this point, there's nothing I can do. They're on my body, okay? But also, I mean, how many of us as Christians have experienced, you know, God using something weird or even sinful, like for His glory? You know what I mean? Like how many people like have shared like a time in their life where like they were far away from God, and to use that, in conversation to bring someone closer to God, to share about, like, so even like tattoos, I feel like it's weird. It's dumb. At worst, it's wrong. But is it something God could use? Like totally, and he has used.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's been like one of my godsons in Vagabond missions. A kid who's rough. Like he got a tattoo. Big tattoo of the date he was baptized, and he came into the Catholic Church on Easter. And that's significant to him. And so God, I think God could use anything, even sinful things. Which I'm not saying tattoos are sinful, but worst case scenario, I think God still uses it. That's the beautiful thing,
Talk about Vagabond. How did you start it? Why did you start it? What is it?
So
now you begin with what it is for those.
So Vagabond Missions is a Catholic nonprofit. It's youth ministry to inner city kids, and so the kind of kids we work with, they're some of them experience abject poverty in a really horrifying way, and some of them are just experience the poverty that Mother Teresa talks about, with is the loneliness, the neglect of feeling unnoticed. Like I always say, the thing that I can't stomach is just this idea, for me or you, if you started like being malnourished, I'd say, Matt, man, you look horrible, which I said this morning, but you're not malnourished, but like, someone, you start to notice things, and you start to say, man, I notice like you haven't been yourself lately or whatever, but it's a whole nother thing to be starving to death or, metaphysically starving to death, and no one even notices, so Mother Teresa in this, her saying, the greatest poverty is be unwanted, unnoticed, it's just like there really is nothing sadder than that just this idea that not only are there people, we all know this, that there's people that are in the world, that are even in our own country or cities that are starving to death, that are dying, that are spiritually shriveled and crippled. But there's also people that no one notices, and those are the people we try and work with in Vagabond. We work mainly with young people, mainly high school age. A lot aren't in high school. Some will be in gangs. Some are kids that are in high school that have special needs. Some are just lonely. But like, we really want the kids that maybe have been pushed to the margins or rejected even by schools or churches. Like we want, like we feel like our special calling is to work with the lowliest of these, like in our country in the States, and so that's what it is. And as far as like how we got involved, I think a lot of times when people see me, even when they might see like a thumbnail on your thing, oh, this guy probably has a crazy story, like I was sniffing crack off the curb, 5 years ago, and now here I am at Pints with Aquinas. And the reality is, like, I grew up just in a white suburban neighborhood. I'm not, I don't really have a crazy story. I mean, I met Jesus pretty young in my life. I have ups and downs like everyone else, but this was not, like a thing of circumstance where it was like, well, Bob's, from the inner city, and so he should work with inner city kids. Really, it's more of a story, kind of what we were talking about as far as missionary activities. Just I fell in love, and what happened was, me and my wife, Kate, we got married the night I finished school. I had a final that day I finished school, and then I got married on a Friday night. Left Steubenville. I was at Franciscan, and we moved to New York, and we started working. Go ahead.
New York City?
No, we were in Schenectady. It's a couple hours north of New York City. And the funny thing is, it's like I went there to interview, and the pastor said, oh, this is kind of an urban area. But he was 74. His name is Father Brucker, and he's still his greatest boss I've ever had, But this guy was like, it's kind of an urban area. And we went to Mass that Sunday when we were interviewing, and it was just a sea of like white-haired Catholics. It was like, look. I just thought, like, here's an old guy who thinks this is like inner city or whatever.
Right.
But, a couple months into us being there, And it was just, now they had no youth ministry or anything like that, but we just we had an old abandoned convent on the property, and we started like just doing stuff. We'd play loud music in the parking lot, have pizza, and we'd do just stupid loud things outside. Then we'd all get them to come inside. We'd have mass, stuff like that, and tons of kids were coming out. But it was like just what you would imagine, like the stereotypical, like they were just fights, drugs. The police were there like every week. And like, honestly, I wish I could be like, and we were up for the challenge. We wanted to save these kids, but like me and my wife, like I remember like crying a lot. It was our first year being married. Bob Rice lived like 30, 40 minutes away, and he had this little parish that everyone skipped around and held hands during mass. And, it was like beautiful little like.
Sounds worse than what you had.
Yeah, but it was cool, like in the sense of like it was this like small world after all, like beautiful little scene where everyone was loving Jesus and doing hand motions, the songs and stuff, and you're like, oh man, that seems so neat. And we wanted like just to make an impact, but we didn't want to be inconvenienced, and we didn't know what the hell we were doing. I remember being one day I was in Atlanta doing some ministry there, and my wife, who was like 8 months pregnant, was leading the Bible study outside of the parking lot, and she called me. And she was like crying. She's like, the police are here. There's 2 vans. They're throwing kids in the vans, because this one group came over and started fighting the kids that were in Bible study, and it was just like, it was so shocking. I remember one time we did a New Year's Eve lock-in, which, I mean, lock-ins are just the most horrible like concept that youth
Are we still doing
ever.
that in youth ministry? Or was that just a 90s thing?
Lock-ins.
Or early 2000
how
thing?
horrible is that? But anyway, we did like a midnight basketball tournament at this lock-in, and these kids got in a fight. And then this one kid pulled out like a box cutter, and they were like circling like it was a West Side Story, And then I was like on the phone with my friend Aaron. I was like, I gotta go. It's a knife fight, And so there was a lot of like crying and like, man, what the hell did we get ourselves into? It was like that scripture, like, you duped me, Lord, I let myself be duped. And it definitely was the Lord moving, because it wasn't what we were looking for. But at the same time, like, what changed everything, the entire trajectory of our life, and the birth of Vagabond was like, we fell in love. And this is what, like, I think like one of the big issues with the church right now, or the politicization of of Catholicism right now, is it's like we're in these camps of like, you're a social justice warrior, or you're a rad trad, or you're this or that, or you're a Republican. It's like all these camps, and like, God forbid you be in the camp of like the poor, because it seems like you're weird, or you're liberal, or you're this or that, and the thing that changes everything for everyone is if you fall in love. Like I try and explain just on like a very earthy sense, like when we fall in love, we all have memories of being in junior high, fall in love with some girl, and you'll do anything, what I mean? Like you'll skip playing football with your buddies to bake cookies with her because you're in love, like, and like I think like it's almost an ingredient of sainthood is just falling in love, because when we fall in love, we start doing crazy stuff, and so I feel like if you're like, man, what do I need to do to be a saint? I wouldn't say like it's like read these 18 prayers every day. It's just like, dude, find some way for you to fall in love, for your heart to like be shaken awake, and to the place that you could fall in love. And so that's what happened with us with these inner city kids, is like we went from like banging our head off the wall, crying, what did we get ourselves into? Like, we need to apply somewhere else, to like, we are in love. And, that first year, there were like 20 kids that went through RCIA. And, like, it was from like tears of pain to tears of joy to like, man, these are kids that are unnoticed, and like the church, for whatever reason, whether it's lack of resources, lack of knowledge, lack of interest, whatever, is easy for these kids to fall through the cracks.
Lack of love.
Yeah. And for them to like just be passed over, like, because they're weird or smelly or special needs or this, or they're mean, or they look weird, and our hearts started to break, and we started to fall in love. And there was this point, like where I feel like me and my wife Kate were like, this is what we want our lives to count for. And it was at that moment that, like Vagabond was born. Like we didn't, everything didn't just, spring up out of the ground, but it was something that, like, I feel like this was a moment that we were like, we want this to be, our legacy, but also not for a sense of like, because I want people to remember this, but because like, it fits with me, like I'm a weirdo. You know what I mean? And like there's so many like weird, quirky things about inner city youth ministry that I feel like sometimes when people are giving me accolades of like, oh, what you do, for the church, or what you did for, I could never do it, thanks for, and I like that because I like words of affirmation, so I'll take it. But like, to be honest, I always kind of say like, man, this is just God being good to me, because I don't know what the hell else I would do with my life. Like, I thank God God gave me something weird to do, because I'm weird. And I feel like it's like, these two worlds coming together, the world's needs, like the way God made my heart. And so that's kind of how it birthed. But now it's in lots of different cities, and we have like 50, 60 missionaries, and people are doing this, throughout the country. And it's really like there's been hundreds now of these kids who have become Catholic, that have been baptized, that have found a home in the church and in this nonprofit. And it's like the most beautiful thing. Like there's just...
Was Kate as equally... I mean, is Kate weird like you? I don't think you're weird, but in the sense that you're saying you're weird. Is she?
Come on. Yeah. No. She's...
Did you have to talk her into doing this sort of stuff? Or?
When we were engaged, I remember like telling her I wanted to do youth ministry. And at this time, I didn't think it was going to be inner city ministry, youth ministry. But I was telling her, she's like, well, what does that mean? And I was like, well, like I want kids to come over for dinner and stuff like this, and call the house. And she was like, oh, I don't know that. Like, I love that idea, which is funny now thinking of her, because she's like just a bleeding heart, like just loves people, will do anything. And really, obviously, like there's a point of being like a spouse, this, we were just talking to about this to a certain extent, but like, your spouse, hopefully is always pulling you in one direction or the other, like pulling you off the one brink. Or for me, this is how it is. I feel like Kate and I are pretty extreme, so it's like pulling away, like chill out, or like, come back over. We need to like engage our hearts, and there's been times where like, there was one time where I just, and I'm like I shoot from the hip, man. I feel like my gravestone's gonna say like he shot from the hip, and he loved Jesus, and but there was one night, I don't know what it was that got me like so fired up, but I just decided in the morning I was gonna sell all of our furniture. No, give away all of our furniture, and I just loaded up the couches and everything in both of our living room.
Kate?
I told her in the morning, and she, that's what I mean. Like the point of the story is like, she thankfully has like a heart that like she's willing to, follow my lead. There's times where I'm willing to follow her lead, but like, where it's just like, yeah, hell yeah, let's do it, but there's also many times where she now, especially after we just celebrated our 22-year wedding anniversary 2 days ago, but like we, now there's times where it's like, chill out, we've done this, we've made mistakes, we've made a lot of mistakes, as far as, how do you live radically yet responsibly? It's a really hard balance. But I gave away all these furniture. My wife was pregnant. A week later, I have a folding chair in this green couch I got from the Urban Mission downtown for $5 that my wife said smelled like sweet butt. She's like, I'm sorry, but all I can say it smells like is a sweet butt, which sounds so gross. So she cried until I got rid of that and bought new furniture. So like the point is like she's crazy enough to like go along for the adventure, but it's not to say that like there isn't parts of both of us that have been really refined, like in marriage, where you're like, yeah, I need to.
Something similar happened to me. I lived in Ireland because I have this kind of all-in kind of mentality like you, I think. And so we were living in Ireland, in Gidor and Donegal, and my wife was headed back to Texas for a couple of weeks. And I don't know, I just had this immediate thought, like, how cool would it be just to watch like all of The Simpsons? So I went and bought, some, because this is back before whatever. So I had to buy the DVD and I rented it. And I think I watched 2.5 episodes and I became so disgusted with myself that I took the DVD out, I clipped the cord of the TV and threw it in the trash. But then, 2 weeks later, we bought a bigger TV. It's like, what was that about? But it was, I find myself, even today, right? Like getting rid of technology and just striving for the ideal, but then needing to be grounded too.
Yeah. And that's the hardest part, I think, of, wanting to be holy, is like, at least for someone, I think, with the personality you're describing, it's like that part of me isn't hard to awake, like the part of me that's like, I'm all in. I feel like I'm easily excitable, like I'm the kind of guy, like I watch one of those documentaries that are like, don't eat meat or only drink apple juice, and the next day I'm like, I've thrown everything out. We're only doing that, it gets like, I could watch a documentary and it says like, you should cut off your, pinky. And the next day I would do it. I'm like a very like but I think the hard part is like, there is a beauty to that. Like I've come to accept that about myself. Like this isn't like, I think from when I was a younger guy, I was just embarrassed that was like how I worked. This is how my heart is, it's like someone who's emotional and you could see them fighting it. I don't want to be, I'm not emotional. But you realize like, this is how God made me. Like, and this is okay. This is cool. This is not like, it's not weird, but that part of that flippant, like shoot from like, I just, for so many years, like I think I was so embarrassed about that, that like you finally come to grips, like, okay, this is part of who I am. Yeah, but that's
a hard thing to realize. I still do that. I'll meet some soft-spoken, joyful priest, and I'm like, why aren't I like that? I should be like that. I'm going to try to be like that. And
I'd always tell
my attempts fail.
I'd always tell my friend in college, I'd be like, whenever I meet someone like that, an introvert or someone who's like poised, I'd be like, I feel like a social whore, like I just feel like I'm just constantly spewing, verbal diarrhea everywhere. And, I just want to be laughed at or affirmed or whatever. But there's some line in the middle there where you're like, look, all of us, I feel like have been given the makings to be a saint, like whether that's like you're heavy on the passion side, or you're heavy on the part of you that has a deep interior light. Like there's a part of you, I feel like, that God's given you that's like, oh, look, I gave you like a real blessing here, the way your heart was made. But it doesn't mean you don't need to stretch that capacity in other ways. And so I feel like with me and my wife, like we've helped, and it's not pretty, it's not just like we sit down and cross our legs and we discuss when we fight a lot, like I always tell like young couples, like, look, it's okay, like if you argue and if there's tension and the people that say I've never fought or I've never this or whatever, like I have a real hard time relating to that, because I feel like any relationship I've ever had, whether it's my kid, my best friend, my wife, a coworker, it's like you're gonna have things you disagree on and argue about, but in that, a lot of times, your heart begins to change and like, well, you're right. I do need to chill out, or I do need to come back over here or whatever. And so thankfully, Kate.
And that does go back to our personality types too, right? Like I remember when I had kids, finding it a very difficult transition, and I would try to like relate to people, hoping that they'd have a similar experience, and it was such a lonely feeling when people would be like, I've never had that experience. So like my wife and I are very big personalities in different senses, and it's the same thing. Like when we fight, it's I mean, you don't ever want to kind of excuse fighting dirty. Never. No, you don't want to be like, well, it's just my big personality. Like, no, you never want to do that, and you want to repent of that. But we're the same. We fight.
Yeah, we read this book when we were when we were engaged, and like one of the premises of the book was like, it's worthless to like spend time or spend energy, that upset that you're in another fight, when you could just be spending that energy to get through the fight. Like it's okay to fight, like it's okay to disagree. It's okay to like obviously you have to learn how to do that well and stuff like that. But it's definitely not worth just the constant like, oh, here we go again. We're another, it's like you've got to learn to just like.
Well, you start comparing yourself to other people, right? You're like, do other people do this? Like, do other marriages? Like, we're weird. What's wrong with us? There's something wrong with us.
Yeah.
It's so important to say these things as people get married and they start experiencing this and they think they're a freak and something's wrong with them. I always like to say to people, like, you're not as interesting as you think you are. Like, we're all doing this, this thing. Yeah.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, I remember when I was engaged, just feeling, we fought so much when we were engaged, and I thought engagement was going to be bliss and making out and your hair blown in the wind and, and all that stuff. And I just wish someone else who had been engaged before told me like, hey, it kind of sucks being engaged. Like
what was the number one reason you guys would fight?
Well, I feel like it was like your engagement. It's like all of the, like you have like this weightiness of like, here we go, we're doing this, we're making a life decision, we're gonna love each other forever, but like you don't have the sacrament. You're not sleeping with each other. If you're living, striving to live a holy life, you're probably not sleeping together. And so it's like you have almost like the worst of both worlds. Like here, all the gravity of saying we're gonna like make this decision and live our lives for this, and yet none of the sacramental grace, none of the physical intimacy that and so and also it's just like anytime there'd be a hiccup, all of a sudden it had all this eternal weight to it that you're like, oh, maybe we're not meant to, you wanted fried chicken at the thing. I wanted spaghetti, it's just like stupid little things, So also I think it was coming to grips with just, who we were. But I think it is like, just come back to the whole idea that like, this is how we're made to live in covenant. We're made to live with sacramental grace. But like, if you try and just do that, like marriage light, like as being engaged, it just, you really feel crappy about it, I think.
No, that's so important to say. Yeah, I'm trying to think, Cameron and I, what would we fight about? I don't know if we fought a great deal, but it is true. Like you put this in our engagement, but I think it's because you do put this pressure on yourself, like this feeling that you should feel a certain way. Like you've made this decision and it's irrevocable and you should feel as passionate about it every second, as you did when you first made it. And I remember even just like a few years into our marriage, like struggling and wondering if I made a mistake. Like, should have I been a priest maybe? And I screwed this up because I was romantic or horny or something. I was like, no, I gotta get married. Yeah. But it's like, maybe I screwed that up and I should have been a priest and I've messed it up. But I think it's important to voice those things because again, I'm not interesting in that sense. I know I'm interesting in other senses, but I'm not interesting in that sense. Like we all deal with things like that. And if we don't discuss them, especially in platforms like this, we kind of do people a disservice because they experience it and they think there's something fundamentally wrong with them when it's like, no, you made a commitment and now you need a will to love your bride and your kids.
And that's why, like, for me, like the mystery of the incarnation, like that's something that I love to meditate on, like whether it's an evangelization or just my personal walk with the Lord. It's just like this idea of ministry is messy, marriage is messy. Life is messy. Our relationship with the Lord is messy. It's just easy to like hear, someone like you or someone we look up to or whatever, sharing something about their marriage or their spiritual life or something they were reading or whatever, and just to be like, oh, I'm not experiencing it like that, but it's just like, no, most of life is boring and messy. Yeah,
that's right. What I mean? And when we do share about our messy parts, like we just did, we're still sharing it from a sense of it's resolved. Yeah. So even sharing the mess is something that's not messy, which doesn't help people in the middle of their mess because they haven't had that resolve yet.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. And I think that to me, doing all I've ever done in my life, and this also, I feel like it gives perspective to like I'm always amazed, like when I talk to people that have done lots of different things or business gurus or whatever, like it's really interesting to me. All I've ever done is ministry, but like to me it's become one of the greatest like sources of peace, like for me in ministry. It's just this idea that ministry is messy and it takes a long time and it often doesn't look like you thought it was going to look like, it's like all those things, like they're kind of comforting to be. I
love that, messy and boring. I love how you put that. Most of life is messy and boring.
Yeah. It's just like, even if you look at like Jesus doing ministry in in the scriptures. It's like
these are the highlights of his day.
Right,
But there was other
exactly.
points where he went to the bathroom.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Or that he was on a walk with somebody
right.
and they ran out of things to talk about.
Right.
You know?
Or even just like, I always like to say, like, as far as like incarnational ministry is like, we're given this like super concentrated, thing in the last couple of years of his life. But most of his life, 30 out of 33 years, he just did normal stuff. He hung out with people, he ate, he played, he listened, he worked, and I think like that's actually like a very freeing model for ministry when because I think some of us, myself included, there's times like, where like you mentioned Scott Hahn, like, and like having taken him as a student when I was in college, there'd be times where I'd be with someone that I didn't have the right answer about the faith or whatever, and I'd be like, oh, what would Scott Hahn say? Or I wish I knew, but you realize like that's just not the way normal life happens, and it's actually freeing to admit that, most evangelization, it happens in a slow, messy way, and there's give and take, and it's most time it's, we all like to hear the story. I sat next to this guy in the plane, and by the end of the plane, he was bawling, and I prayed over him, and he's a Catholic speaker, but most of the time it's just not like that. Most of the time it's like we over 10 years, like we're able to share our family and our life a little bit with our neighbor, and they maybe come to church with us or something. You know what I mean? Like it's right. A lot less.
Well, and most of the things that we watch have to do with the highlights of our life. So social media is the obvious one, where we don't post the boring moments that comprise the majority of our day. We post the interesting moments. But then also like television or movies all revolve around the interesting things people did. You ever watch that show 24 with Jack Bauer?
Of course, bro.
I had this thought it'd be real funny one day if like Jack Bauer was sick one day and that was the season, and it's just him going to the bathroom and sleeping. Like you watch that show, Jack Bauer like hunting down the bad guys, and then like he needs to go to a poo, but like that was never shown, and I'm glad. But like he needed
it'd be awesome, though,
it would have been great. It would have been a great 12 minutes. It would have been very good comic relief. But like any movie is like that. It's not just here's like an epic part of this person's life. It's like here's the epic parts of the epic part of this person's life, because
totally.
they cut out the bit from when he drives from this place to this bit because that would have been really boring. And so you're just always seeing these epic parts of people's lives, and it might lead you subconsciously to think that your life should be like that, when, as you say, the majority of our life is messy and boring in some sense.
Totally.
And I love that, how you said that. That's freeing. There's freedom in that.
Yeah, even with missionary work, with Vagabond Missions, like I now help with recruitment and stuff. And when we're doing interviews or even talking to people about possibly giving, because that's our whole thing. Could you give a year of your life to serve the poor? Like it's a year commitment. Like a lot of times I say, hey, my guess is you've been on like vagabondmissions.com. You saw the opening video that's got, a missionary with a crying kid, and they're playing some Coldplay song or something, you know what I mean? Like, and you're like, oh, I want that in my life, but
100%.
But the truth is like being a missionary most days sucks, and most days you are like, man, I'm failing. I'm not getting through to it. It doesn't show like the times where you're standing outside of a school and you went to say hi to a kid and they just walked by you, or like when you were trying to give a talk at a youth group night and all the kids just left, or there was a fight in the middle of mass or something. It's just like you just show the curated.
You should do a video like that. Just the boring bits. Every prospective missionary.
Well, dude, Sarah.
What's the URL? Because we want to put that in the description.
For Vagabond?
Yeah.
I just vagabondmissions.com.
Cool.
http /
www.
Yeah, so I mean, there's lots of videos on there that kind of shows what we do and stuff like that. But I just think there is this idea, though, and especially a lot of us have done a spring break mission trip or whatever. But like this missionary work is sexy and exciting and romantic. Like there's just this part of it that seems like I'm going to go to the jungle and I'm going to spoon feed a baby that's, floating down the river, bananas. And, the truth is like most of it is pretty boring. And most of it, you feel like you're not making any difference. Honestly, like if you want to say like, what are the telltale marks of like missionary work? It's like you're you feel like you're failing, you know, like you're running into opposition. It seems slow, you know, like that's normal missionary work. But because we're like a bite-sized clickbait culture, like all we do is we're used to seeing like we were talking about before, like looking up like the top 10 times Fradd destroyed his guests, you know, like, and this will be on there, I'm sure, you know, but like, you know, you want to see the things, you know, like the top 10 knockouts in it, you know, and it's just like a lot of it's just rolling around on the ground and it's not knockouts, you know.
Yeah. So. Hey, I want to do an ad read. Is it okay? Awkwardly. Just want to insert an awkward ad read. Here we go. Ready?
Yeah.
Set. Hallow.com/Matt Fradd. You ever heard of Hallow?
No.
Haven't you? Well, here you go. I'm going to tell you about it. Hallow is this Catholic prayer and meditation app that this guy designed. He was kind of involved in Buddhism and stuff like that, and so he downloaded this one app. I always forget the name of it, but it's sort of like Calm, C-A-L-M, for those who can't understand my accent, about like meditating and mindfulness and things like that. And he wanted to create an app that was 100% Catholic and that could help people pray and meditate, you know, pray the rosary, do a nightly examen, Lectio Divina. They even have like sleep stories read by Jonathan Rumi, who plays Jesus in The Chosen, or Father Mike Schmitz. And when I first heard about it, I downloaded it, and it was really good. And it's only gotten better and better and better. And it's one of the best. It's the #1 Catholic app that's downloaded. So I'd recommend to people out there, if you want to grow in your prayer life, if you want to learn how to meditate better, if you just have trouble sitting in silence, that this is a really cool app that could help with that. Hallow, HALLOW.com/Matt. They were doing daily meditations for Advent. They're always uploading new stuff. So I know you can download the app for free, and then you'll get certain things for free on the app. But if you want access to the entire thing for a month, go to hallow.com/Matt Fradd, link in the description below, and you can get access to all of their content for a month and decide for yourself whether you want it or not. My wife and I have used it. We really liked it. I would go into adoration sometimes, and because of my own interior chaos and refusal to sit with myself in the boring moments, I would listen to it, and it would just like lead you in this prayerful thing. And you can like choose whether you want like a male to kind of lead it or a female. It's very soothing voices and all that kind of thing. But a lot of people say they don't know how to pray for even like 10, 20 minutes a day. This could be a really cool way to begin doing that. So hallow.com/Matt Fradd. That's an ad read.
Are you saying hello or a hallow?
Hallow. Like hallowed be thy name.
I still can't tell which one you're saying.
Hallowed be thy name. H. A is in apple.
Okay.
I had this funny moment with my accent in Canada where a woman came up to me, right? And I'm going to do her Canadian accent and I'm going to butcher it. But she went, "Hey there, I'm Barb." Like Barbara.
Yeah.
And I went, "Oh, g'day, Barb." But the way I say Barb, B-A-R-B, sounds like the way you say Bob. So I'm like, "Oh, hey, Barb." And she went, and she didn't know I was Australian. She's like, "No, not Bob, Barb." I went, "Yeah, Bob. Barb. Yeah, no, not bloody Barb." Yeah. So anyway,
wow. It's like Bobby.
Hey, Bobby. Yeah, it doesn't sound as cool. The Australian accent is not as cool as your accent, man.
No, I think it is, bro. I mean, what if you had to compare though Australia, New Zealand? Who wins, bro? New Zealand, bro.
Yeah, I don't. I think Australian. I think the Australian accent is more masculine on a dude.
The New Zealand accent is sharper.
Yeah, for those at home who, they do the thing where the joke, of course, is fish and chips. Oh, hey, bro, you want some fish and chips instead of fish and chips?
Who says that?
The New Zealanders, fish and chips.
Well, dude, so we went.
I just got to say though, I love New Zealand, and I actually would say to people, first of all, let me just break this down.
I don't believe that.
It's an underdog syndrome.
Okay.
Whoever's really angry at the other group is usually the smaller group. Okay. Canadians are upset with Americans, but Americans think Canada's cute. Australians don't care about New Zealanders. They just think they've got a beautiful looking country. New Zealanders are really pissed with Australia.
It's funny.
The Orthodox are upset with the Catholics. It's like the Catholics are like, "No, we're kind of the same." They're like, "We hate you and you're very different." They don't really say that. Some of them do on YouTube. But it's this underdog syndrome, I think, that you often see in play. But no, I was in New Zealand a couple of years ago, and if people said to me, like, "Where should I go, New Zealand or Australia?" I don't know. Like, New Zealand's gorgeous. You should go there.
Oh, that's awesome.
It looks like Hawaii and Scotland had a baby. It's tropical and rugged and terrific.
Yeah. No, it's so beautiful. We went there, I don't know, it was maybe 10 years ago, but we was there for some kind of ministry thing, but then we stayed for a couple of weeks, and And on the plane, we always laughed so hard because like it was a New Zealand airline.
Oh, they're funny.
And when you get on, first of all, they were playing weird music. It was like New Zealand radio, you know. But then the guy, when he was like saying something, I was going to say it was masked, but it's not masked now because obviously this is well before mask. But it must have been your
seatbelt.
Seatbelt. But he was like, if your seatbelt, I'm not going to do the whole spiel with the accent, but he said, you know, like if they come around and your seatbelt's not on, they say you'll be in big trouble.
Bug trouble.
Big trouble. I mean, it was just. I mean, for some reason, it was so funny. And they said something about a whinger. I didn't know what that was. A whinger.
Yeah. Complain. Someone who complains.
Yeah. Oh, that was at the retreat. This guy said,
"Don't be bloody
God loves it."
whinging."
No, they said God loves a whinger.
Oh, okay.
It's like a whinger. What's a whinger, man? But I thought that was
There
so.
are so many Australianisms that have
So
fallen out
funny.
of my vocabulary.
Oh.
When I first got here, it was fun to have people like not understand me, you know. But then after a while, it just gets annoying.
Yeah.
There's so many words like that I've stopped saying.
Yeah, you've got to.
Whinger. I got to get back. Stop your bloody whinging. I got to get back into that.
God loves a whinger.
Yeah.
Think that's true?
We call the English the whinging poms. I don't know where poms comes from, but
Is it like palms or?
I don't know what poms means. Why we call them the whinging poms. Do you ever watch cricket when you lived in New Zealand as a kid?
Oh yeah, bro. I played cricket.
I love cricket.
It was
so
one
much.
time my dad. I lived in New Zealand for 3.5, 4 years, and it was one time my dad took off work and came to see my cricket team play.
Yeah.
And I like, you know, I don't know if I was pitching and bowling, whatever, but like I hit the wickets, you know, and it was awesome.
Have you ever heard of the Ashes series?
Ashes?
So what happened was, this is pretty cool. So every few years, Australia and England play each other in what's called the Ashes series.
Okay.
And the reason it's called the Ashes series is that when Australia, you know, that convict colony, first beat England in cricket, they took the stumps or the wicket, those wooden sticks behind the batsman, for those watching, and burnt them and put them in an urn. And the line was, "Cricket is dead."
Wow.
So now, since then, they play for a replica of that urn. It's called the
that's
Ashes.
so
Isn't that
cool.
terrific?
That's really cool.
It's happening right now. I would love to watch it.
Do you ever like? Have you ever taught your kids how to play? Have you ever played?
Yeah, not really. It's the thing with sports for me is I got to be around people who care about it for me to care about it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So like if you were to say to me, "Hey, let's go down watch cricket tomorrow at 4 a.m. at this place,"
Yeah.
I'd be all about it.
Yeah.
But I can't get into it on my own.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
I get that. Yeah, I don't like sports.
Yeah.
But I
don't
remember
either,
playing
yeah.
like against the end of a driveway, like playing against the garage door.
Yeah. Well, then
and
you put
running down, touching the
you put a
end of the
bin
driveway.
behind you.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I have so many good
Wickets.
memories.
What was that little thing on the top? Bail?
Bales? Yeah.
Bales. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good times.
That's
man.
like probably the only sport I could really get into.
we should play
Let's
live.
bring it back.
Me and you should play versus each other 1v1.
I would love that.
1v1 cricket, bro. Next Pines with Aquinas.
Yeah, you remember? You were all right. If I get there, that's a 6. If I hit the wall, that's a 4. And then you bring like things out like that's the those are the like the fielders. You know, you put a bin over there if you hit that wheel.
course, bro.
Yeah. So now we have no Protestants or Americans watching at this point.
We're down to just the last couple. I keep having my phone go off because I know people are texting me like snarky stuff.
We should read them.
They're all going to be snarky, dude. They're all going to be stuff like, "Why don't you shut up, Bob," or something. Yeah.
When did you get that tattoo on your neck, and was that a big decision? I don't want to get into another discussion about tattoos, but just real quick.
The one on my neck.
No,
Okay.
where's it going? You put
Well,
it back?
you don't want to do.
I do a little bit. I want to see if they're funny.
They want to see what you think of Matthew Kelly. Okay.
Did someone ask that?
Yeah.
What else are people asking?
They laughed when I said social whore.
Yep.
There's a
You
lot
said social whore and verbal diarrhea in one sentence, which I thought was,
Well, there we go.
you know.
Matt Berninger said he's praying for me now.
Well, that was much nicer.
Yeah, that was pretty nice.
I got to have Matt on the show. I love Matt.
Yeah, he is a good dude, man.
I would never say that to his face.
He's a real good dude.
A good dude. Actually, speaking of tattoos,
Tattoo on my neck. I got after
Yeah.
my stroke, by the way. I was like really like not with it, and I got the neck tattoo. But then at that point, I was like, who cares?
This is going to sound like a tangent. I've fallen off of my chair laughing 3 times in my life, and they all had to do with watching a movie. And one time I fell off my chair. Actually, I think it was my hotel bed. I fell off with laughter. Was when Andy Bernard from The Office went to get a tattoo on his butt. Do you ever watch that episode?
Yeah, of
and
course,
he says,
man.
"Time to ink my stink." And he threw his pants down and jumped up on the table. And they're like, actually, please keep your pants on. Well, too late. We'd actually much prefer it. You need to please pull up your pants.
Oh, dude, he was one of the best characters of that.
He really
when
was.
he would have his anger problems, that was so funny.
He was so funny.
The best, dude.
Yeah, but that time to ink my stink, I fell off the bed laughing. Yeah. Golly.
Maybe you should have Matthew Kelly on this, bro.
Yeah, I've never chatted with Matt Kelly.
No?
Matthew Kelly, yeah. Okay. I remember there were times in my life where people thought I was Matthew Kelly. Because I used to go to a church in San Diego, and afterwards someone came up and just thanked me for my work. I'm like, oh, man, thanks so much. I didn't even know anybody knew what I was doing. This is before I'd written a book or something. Funny. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, it's really helped me. And then as we would talk, it would become apparent that they thought I was Matthew Kelly. Because they might say something like, be the best version of yourself, something like that. And I'm like, bugger.
Not that.
And then I made a decision just from that point on that if that ever happened again, I'd just play along with it and just not tell them I wasn't Matthew Kelly.
Yeah, I've had people think I was Bob Rice just because
Have
Bob.
You really?
Yeah.
You and Bob Rice look very different.
Yeah. I think it's just that Bob, I think that was about it. Yeah,
Did Matthew Kelly go to school with you?
We went to school together for a semester in Austria. Yeah, okay. He was super weird back then, man. I don't have a podcast, so I could say bad stuff about him if you.
Sure. Whatever you want to do. Now, because you were Jason Everett was also in your school.
No, he was. Yeah, dude, there were some rock stars. Chris Stefanik. We were all in school together. Yeah,
I want to. I've been thinking about doing a video where I reveal secrets about well-known Catholics, but those secrets would be really flattering secrets.
Oh, wow.
And so let's do that. Can we do that?
Yeah, sure.
Who do you want? I'll start with Jason.
Okay.
All right. So people don't know this stuff. Yeah. But I listened to his chastity talk, and it really, I wouldn't say changed my life, but I would say that it really helped me understand why I shouldn't be having sex. Because after I converted at the age of 17, I wanted to not do any of that stuff, and I knew I shouldn't be masturbating or looking at porn or hooking up or anything, but I didn't really know why. It didn't, And so when I went to Canada to serve with Net Ministries, it's the first time I heard about Jason Everett, and who introduced me to Jason Everett?
Chris Stefanik.
Cameron Mader, my now wife.
Ah.
She was just, I just thought she was beautiful, and I loved her, and she was fun, and I just wanted to hang out with her and always sit with her and talk to her. She was just, I didn't even think I was attracted to her at the time. I just loved being around her. And she had this geeky chastity shirt on, where on the back it said call me a prude, call me frigid. And down the bottom it said, just don't call me for sex until you call me your wife. So I did that. And no, but she was telling me about Jason Everett and never heard of him. So she gives me the CD. You remember them?
Yeah.
And I went back to my room that night and I listened to it, and I just was so moved by it. But anyway, when I first got in touch with Jason, I just remember thinking, here's a guy who really wants to be a saint. I met him in an adoration chapel in England, because wherever he goes and speaks, he'll take an hour. You're smiling. I feel like you've got other stories to share. Funny stories. He'll go and he'll spend an hour in adoration either before every talk or every day, just offering all to the Lord. And I remember sometimes you'll meet people in a public setting, and as you get to know them, they become a lot more cash. And he has, him and I are good friends, but I'll say to him, gosh, I just feel like the talk just didn't go that well, and he'll always say something well, I just feel like we do a lot more for them with our prayers before and after than when we're up there yabbing. He loves our Lord, and he's holy.
Dude, without a doubt, man.
And I love that about him,
without a doubt. And when we were in college, we were on these scent teams together. It's net junior, it's the JV net team, but you would do these little one day or weekend retreats, and I remember, he was this exact same, I feel like there are some people that I feel like once they're a personality, obviously they it's kind of necessary evil. You take on a whatever, you're this whatever. But he really was the same when he was I felt like in college, he was so good with like stories about saints, and you know, we'd be in small group with just some random like junior high parish youth group, and he would just be rattling through. I mean, really interesting, telling, you know, stories and stuff like that. And I remember always thinking, man, he's really good. And he's always been good. I mean, it's just so funny how quick. There's certain people, like, I feel like their brain works very quickly. He's one of those people. Now, he also, I get it that he does his thing, you know, but my buddy Joey Lombardi, shout out to Joey, he has this impression of Matt, like, because when we would do
Matt or Jason?
To Joey.
You said he has an impression of Matt.
Oh, I meant to say an impression of
Jason.
Okay. Yeah. I wish he had an impression of you. He probably does have an impression of you, but I
wouldn't be that odd.
But anyway, he has an impression of Jason, like where, so when I did Righteous B, Joey would rap and do stuff with me, and we'd be with Jason a lot, and he would, you know, he has these talks that are like his standard, like amazing talks, you know, and he would do, you know, he talks so quick and stuff, and he'd be like, I met a girl in Louisiana, she was 17, sex lots of times, you know, love, yes, no, and he just put down the thing, and he would just like go through these things so quick, and it just always would make me laugh so hard of like the impression, because he was so, but even back in college when he would be telling these like stories of saints or, you know, whatever, like explanation of the Catholic faith, he was like that. He was just, he has a capacity to really, I feel like, relate a lot of information passionately, quickly, and he's always been like that.
And this is, I called him up. He didn't know me from Adam, and you know, but I called him up and said we're doing ministry in Ireland, and he sent me boxes and boxes of those pamphlets. Him and his wife did for free. You know, just paid for shipping, and just a cool dude. And all right, so now it's your turn. Tell us a secret, a deep dark secret of some Catholic personality you know.
Oh gosh, dude. I have some about you, but I don't want to say them. Like,
yeah, please don't.
I have some.
Just like, you know, because people always say, are people the same on stage as off stage? And obviously,
there's a sense
in which you're performing, because it is a performance. You know, you have to capture the attention of 800 or 3,000 teens. But like Father Mike Schmitz is someone who I would say is like, he's just exactly the same. Mark Hart is another guy. Mark Hart.
Yeah, I think most people, honestly, I feel like if people don't strive to be like that, they're like a-holes. You know what I mean? Like,
I haven't had the experience of being on a Steubenville conference where I thought, wow, this guy's like a complete phony.
I haven't done that with the Steubenville conference, but I definitely have had that happen with people. Like, and I wouldn't, honestly, like, I wouldn't say they're the A-listers that people would be like, oh, I know about this, you know. Like, but there have been some people that are just like, man, it's sad when like evangelization is a gig, you know. And I've always thought about like it would be cool to write a piece or write a song, you know. Like I used to do hip hop stuff, but like with like the word prophet and prophet, you know, with the F and with the PH, you know, like just this idea that like it is a weird concept, and I'm not saying it's wrong, you know, like, but like attention, there's got to be attention. When you lose the tension, I feel like that's when you start to like lose your. When
you say tension, do you mean
like
the realization that it's weird to be getting paid to speak?
Yes. And no, not just weird. I get it that I mean, I hope people realize like, man, like is this something like if Paul, you know, the certain group wanted him to come talk to him about the Lord, would he say like, well, if you can't do $3,500, I can't be there. You know what I mean? Like there is a weirdness to that in and of itself, but there's even a weirder thing. Like, and I started seeing this with like, you know, friends who, you know, like they're like, oh, they're whatever. Then they're Uber fan, like Matt Maher, you know, whatever. Like, and certain people like where, and I'm not even saying like Matt or someone like this is doing this, but like all of a sudden they're ushered off the bus into like you know, pipe and draping, you know, like no one can see them. They're in here where there's sushi and, you know, neck massages, you know. It's just like there's a certain part of that where
please tell me that's a real thing. There's someone who gets off a bus and gets a neck massage.
Oh, dude, without a doubt. Well, and I've been there like at events where that's happened to Matt, and I'm not saying like that. Matt,
I'm adding that to my contract.
And I'm not saying that those people are even like they're the ones who like, oh, this is what it is, and you have to provide this or do this, green M&Ms, that whole thing. but you start to slowly, like Jack McAleer, who is like someone I respect a lot. He used to like own Krispy Kreme. He was on the board trustees at Franciscan for a while. But he gave a great talk, was just saying like, it's this slow thing that happens.
Gradual.
Where like all of a sudden you're like, well, I deserve this. I should fly first class. And I should not have to talk to anyone after my talk. I should do this and that, and it's like, it's just
because that's such a great point. It's these indiscernible changes that happen where you just slide into it. Because there's a sense in which I remember when my wife and I used to be with Net Ministries, right? And we would travel and we would run high school retreats and we would stay in host homes. But I don't want to do that, Like you and I, there's some funny stories, But like if someone wants me to come and speak, it's like the person might be terrific, but it could be weird. And there could be issues. And so it starts, right? We're like, you know what? I'd rather you get me a hotel.
Totally.
And even there's probably people who are like, oh, this guy thinks he's important, needs a hotel.
Yeah.
So it's like anywhere along the way, there's going to be someone looking at what you're choosing, and saying, well, that's kind of weird. But then, so I could also imagine, though, a situation where somebody gets flown to, I don't know, Australia, and they're there for 12 hours and they have to give a talk. And I can see, and I know we agree on this. I'm just saying, like, someone's like, well, I need to be first class because I need to sleep. Like, so there's always this sense in which I can see things being justified, but I agree with your point that it's like, there's always got to be that tension. It's not like you could write a list and say, if you're asking for this, then you've crossed over into a bad place.
No, exactly. But there is like, it's the exact reason that the church doesn't say like, well, this exactly is mortal sin, and there's a lot of things involved in that, and there's like there is a sense of your conscience, but like the problem is when the Christian world, whether it's the music world or speaking world or media or whatever, YouTube, like there's a issue like when all we do is just mimic the secular world.
Yes.
It's just like, well, we have to do this, like I do think there's something there that comes in that you're like, but we're actually called to live peculiar lives, that don't just mimic the world. On the flip side of the token, I do understand. I don't think it's an evil desire for like us to want to get to know famous people or like make someone like very famous, like that's, I think there's like something in there that's like a little bit of a, like a part of us that's like made to worship or made to, look up to people. Like those things are all like, they're part of the way we're wired, so I don't think they're evil desires, but I obviously it can come to the point of idol worship, or it can become to the point of like where there's probably some like milestones or some kind of indicators. Like if you need a private jet, you've probably gone too far. Right.
There's a good episode or a good YouTube episode where some Protestant mega church pastor is kind of confronted and just asked about his private jet. And he gave an excuse for it. He's like, well, if I fly commercial, I can't stand up and praise Jesus, praise the Lord. People freak out. I need my jet. You're like, I don't know.
No, dude. That's the whole nature of sin. It's just easy to make excuses for it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Honest.
It's the same, and we got to be careful. Like people who are in the spotlight doing this Christian stuff, running YouTube channels or ministries, right? But then also like those of us who criticize other people got to be careful, because how many times have you met someone who has said things like the church just has to sell stuff and give all the money to the poor? And what sacrifice have they made? Like it's so much easier to point at other people or other groups and criticize them so you can feel better when you've actually made no sacrifice yourself.
Yeah, I'm glad I don't have a YouTube channel, bro. Like, I feel like you, and this is the cross of someone who has a YouTube channel, is like, like you are on a microphone that's going out to lots of people. I'm laying in bed with my wife and saying, oh, this person's an idiot. You know what I mean? Like, it's a big difference, you know what I mean? Like, so it is a hard thing. At the same time, like people need people to be genuine, authentic, and like this is part of the way we communicate now in the modern world. But I think the big thing is like when there's no tension. And I know that that's like a little bit abstract, but like I think there should be some kind of tension, like within the Catholic speaker or the Christian musician, the the Christian celebrity is like, what's the end game? Like what are the non-negotiables? Like there's just got to be something. It can't just be a continuous sliding scale, or I feel like you just end up losing your soul. And you see that now. I mean, my gosh, like there's so many like, Christians or musicians that like I feel like I looked up to that are atheists now. Like and you think, well, I could point out right where those things started happening. You know what I mean? Like, and I don't know.
What's weird too is like America's kind of weird. Like America's weird in that it has this big celebrity culture in a way that I would say Australia and New Zealand don't have. Maybe it's getting there, I don't know, but
it's easy to say when you're a celebrity.
Is it, Neil? Like people. That's just it's kind of how it's wired here.
No,
whereas in Australia, I don't think anyone's flying anybody to give any talk for any amount of money. It's like just so foreign,
No, it is. It is. I think it is very American, but I think it's just because America's the kind of the center of pop culture stuff,
entertainment industry.
I mean, you go somewhere else, they're just watching what America's doing, but it's just, so it is weird.
Now, here's another secret story about someone who is a champion.
I want to tell you secret stories so bad, bro. I just don't want to.
Are they all bad, are they?
I can't think of any like amazingly good ones.
Well, I've thought about this. Bob Schutz.
Yeah.
Bob Schutz runs the John Paul II Healing Center. And he's written some excellent books, Be Transformed, Be Healed. He's going to be on the show in February, actually.
Nice.
So I moved to Steubenville, and it's like the bottom fell out of our lives, with Cameron's my wife being uber sick, going to hospital a few times, the kids trying to adjust to a new place. We didn't have a house. I was in a really bad spot. You know that because we went out for beer. Yeah. And Bob was texting me to ask me to endorse his book. And I just kept putting it off because I was just not doing well. And he said, "How are you doing?" And I don't know him that well. I do now, but I didn't know him well at the time. And I just texted back, "I want to smoke pot and listen to Radiohead. That's all I want to do. So not great." That's what I wrote back. And he said, "Well, let's pray." So every week since February of last year, we've been meeting weekly and praying for an hour each time.
Wow.
And about 3 or 4 weeks into this, I felt bad that I was taking all of his time and I'm not paying him or anything, And I had some stuff I needed to process and deal with. And I thought, I want to offer him money so we can keep doing this. But I want to offer him money in a way that he'll accept. If you say to someone, "Hey, can I pay you for this?" They'll probably be like, no.
Yeah, right.
But there's a way to say it. So I was like, "Hey, it'd probably be good for me to get a therapist anyway. And I would love to be able to make a donation to your apostle, or if I could please... I'd be honored to please pay you for this time." And he just looked at me with a sort of shock. He's like, "No, Matt, that's not what this is about. If you want to make a donation you can, but no, that's not what this is." Oh yeah. And a year later, we're meeting, taking an hour out of his time every week, every 2 weeks to pray.
Wow.
What a guy.
That's awesome.
Like there's a guy who just loves our Lord and knows the gifts he has and wants to use them for the kingdom.
That's awesome.
Now, no doubt he's getting paid in other ways, like for his ministry, but like here's a guy who wants to heal the body of Christ.
Wow.
So there's another good story.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, mine were like Matthew Kelly's bathing suit falling off in Austria and stuff like that.
Please tell me that story.
All right, so this one time we're in Austria.
Okay, well, this cannot be a clip though, because I feel like he would feel like we're picking on him. We cannot make a clip of Matthew Kelly's bathing suit falling off in Austria.
All right, so we're in Austria.
See, there's that tension. I want to do it because it'll get the clicks, but we cannot do that.
It'd be good, but then you have him on here, and me and him will all be on here, and we'll have a little boxing match at the end. So we're in Austria studying. That's the semester he studied at Franciscan when I was in Austria, and we went to the pool one day, all of us, and Matthew Kelly dove into the pool, and okay, so I think he was in his boxer shorts, which I already thought was weird that he was jumping in his boxer shorts. And he, his suit came off, and he kept swimming. He was under the water. He was like deep under the water.
This is a public pool.
Public Austrian pool. Okay, so I mean, like the Austrian code of nudity may be very different, But he got to the other side. He was like on the edge, and he was like, "Boys," he's like, "I got a bit of a problem." He kept saying, "I got a bit of a problem," and someone had to fetch his bathing suit. Yeah. But yeah.
Oh my goodness!
I just don't
were
know
you
why.
tempted just to take that bathing suit and
I
run
just
away?
don't know why he didn't just, if he could swim so long underwater, why didn't he just go down and get his bathing suit? No one would want to touch that bathing suit.
I think you'd just like be so shocked that it happened, and you just keep going.
Yeah, maybe. That's possible. That's possible. But it was weird. I just annoyed me. They kept saying I got a bit of a problem.
I got a bit of a problem.
I got a bit
That's
of a
me
problem.
doing my accent, by the
exactly.
way.
Yeah, so it's a
boy's got a
caricature.
bit of a problem. Yeah. I try to be the best version of myself, but it's difficult without my underwear.
Oh, it happened. It's true.
You know, Scott is another guy who just loves our Lord, and I keep catching him doing beautiful things. You know, like I stayed at his house last September when we were visiting to discern whether we should move here when your whole family had COVID.
Yeah. Oh my God.
And I remember like walking to one of the levels in his house, and he's just walking around praying the rosary, just hands up in the air. Just no one was around. He didn't expect me to walk in. I accidentally did. Oh, sorry. He just loves our Lord. We were going to a retreat together. He invited me to this retreat, Opus Dei retreat, and he wanted to drive up with me. But then he realized the only chance of getting to Holy Mass that day would have been 1 o'clock, and so he's like, "We better go up separate because you probably don't want to be late to it. And I'll be there late." That's beautiful. And then also just seeing him on campus. He goes to Mass every day. Him with Kimberly, like they have such a beautiful relationship. Like I'll often see him. They're not showy about it, but just his arm around her is rubbing her back, or just they pray together after Holy Communion. So he's a real witness to me.
Oh yeah, no, it really is awesome. Like when like someone like that, and I honestly, like I've always thought, man, it'd be cool to have. And I'm not putting him as like he's an old guy, you know what I mean?
Well, he is.
I mean he's getting there. He's older than us, but like there's a whole like group of guys. I mean, a lot of them aren't famous, but that I would say like are Catholic old guys that have been doing this for a long time, and I'm always like amazed at their faithfulness, the kind of things you're talking about in that story. Like there's something I feel like, man, I would love to have them share some of that wisdom. Like, man, how do you know how it is like when you meet like a Catholic old guy who like hears Jesus and he's like, praise Jesus. He's happy.
Ralph Martin.
Right.
He'd be one of those guys.
Really that kind of person where you're like, man, I just, it's hard for me to muster up the joy sometimes. After doing ministry for so long, there's a part of you that, you start to become like, I'm tired, or I'm jaded or I'm whatever. Yeah. And so like I would love to, and I'm sure they would point back to a relationship with the Lord and, personal prayer and all that stuff. But it really, it's like such hope and it's such testimony to, I think, the guys our age, like to look and see like, here's someone who's been faithful, because there are people like who like we knew and loved that like fell off the off the earth, and so it's awesome to see someone like that, to see like the branch connected to the the vine like that. It's really awesome.
Yeah, but no good stories come to mind. That's interesting.
Well, I told you the good one, man.
We can't tell. Can we tell the Tammy story or?
Oh, bro, that's a good one. So there's this. Okay, were you there?
Just 1 second. You're gonna love this story, Neil, and everybody at home buckle up, because when you told me this story, no, I wasn't there,
dude. It's so.
But you
funny.
and I were on a conference with her, and that's when you first told this story.
Oh, dude. So, there's moments where like like you have either you've done something a million times. You're like like I'm always gonna end the concert with this sappy song or this prayer or this whatever, and I'm not saying that was exactly this for Tammy, but there was this speaker, Tammy Evard, and she was telling this story. It was a Friday night talk at a youth conference. There were maybe 3,000 or 4,000 high school kids there, but like at the end of the talk, she said, I'm going to be talking about like,
and she's talking to the people who are managing the set at this point, right?
Like the AV, the lights, all that stuff. She says like, when at the very end of this talk about the crucifixion, I'm going to begin to sing like Amazing Grace. And I want you to like just all the lights off and just like a spotlight on the crucifix. That's what it was. So the spotlight on the crucifix would go off of her to go onto the crucifix. And she starts singing Amazing Grace. She's like, oh man, whatever. Like she sings the song and she starts to like slowly back off the stage. And she's backing towards like the metal stairs that are going up to the stage. And she sings, she's like, da, 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 da. And then she whispers into the microphone, she's like, Amazing Grace. And then the next thing she did was she took a step off the stage, not onto the thing, and just boom, boom. I mean, it was pitch black, dude. It was pitch black.
Down the metal stairs.
Down the metal stairs.
I don't mean to laugh at her
and
misfortune.
her leg was like in between two, so she was like down like this. And I was like the MC of the conference, and so Father Dave Pavanka was like, I mean, we were both like, like laughing, but like it was so horrible, and I was like, what do I do? What do I do? He's like, go. And so I just took the mic out. She's still dangled into the stairs, and I took the mic and I was like, well, the Lord certainly loves us, like I like start trying to like move on to like adoration or whatever we're doing next. But dude, I mean, it was the like, I wish I was not like in charge of like the pastoring the night, because I would have just laid down on the ground and laughed for the next 40 minutes, but I couldn't. Like, I had to get myself together. And it's just the fact that she whispered that shit.
No, but what you said to me the first time, I remember this, is light on the crucifix, very emotional song. You told me, I think, that the last word she whispered was, it's amazing.
It's
bam, 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 bam.
Oh, dude. It was so loud. It was like, don't. And then like her legs somehow went under. She was wearing high heels. She's short. And oh, dude.
Oh, I'm so sorry,
they
Tammy,
couldn't
if
see
you're
exactly
watching
what
this.
happened because there was only the light on the crucifix.
Oh my gosh.
Dude, it was horrifically awesome.
What I would do when we'd go up on stage, it's big, you got 3,000 people out there, it's dark, you got the lights on the stage, and then they'd invite the team up, right? And we'd all kind of walk up. My thing every time was to whisper to the guy in front of me, dude, your fly's down. Very serious. And then he's up on stage, lights, and he's got to see if his fly's down.
Yeah.
That was my thing.
You probably said that to me. I'm
did.
constantly worried my fly's down. A lot of times my fly is
Me
down.
too, because I give porn talks a lot of the time.
Yeah, well,
you don't want
yours
that.
is worse.
That'll
Yours
ruin
is
your
worse.
talk.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm sure you said that to me.
Hey, here's a cool story about you. Speaking of like beautiful stories about people.
Here we go.
When you were 33, you gave up everything but water for that year, as far as drinking. That's really beautiful. What a cool thing, because you said it was the Christ year. Christ died at 33, and so you made that sacrifice to give up all alcohol, coffee, everything but water for an entire year.
Yeah.
I tried that. That's just funny. You told me that story. I was so moved by it. I thought that was what a beautiful thing to do. So I gave up everything but water as soon as I turned 33 for about 3 days. And I crushed those 3 days.
No, dude, I did it. But even in the morning, I would wake up, I would like boil hot water. I needed something mentally to feel like coffee.
Yeah.
And then I got into the vibe, man. I was drinking hot water, and man, it would have been a lot easier if like I was into like sparkling water, because now I like LaCroix and that stuff. It feels like alcohol to me. It's so enjoyable.
It's like soda, isn't it?
It's awesome.
It's
But I wasn't drinking that back then. So I just did just water. But I remember my buddy Mark was getting married that year, and I was in the wedding, and like one of the greatest parts of a wedding is just watching the wedding, while drinking alcohol. And I wasn't drinking alcohol, so for whatever reason, I've smoked like 3 packs of cigarettes like during that wedding. I remember being outside while everyone else was inside drinking. And I was like, man. I'm not even like a smoker, but I just smoked and smoked, I felt like I needed to, have a little bit of a buzz. And I think I just ended up having like a nicotine sickness. Yeah. So it was a tough year, but it was cool. I mean, it was cool doing it. I remember, New Year's Eve or my birthday, I guess it would have been, breaking the fast, and it was cool. But, like, I don't know, for me, it was kind of like what you're saying about the 3 days. It was like a tough week or two, but then you just kind of get used to it. It's just like, well, this is just what
This is what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
Had you told people in your life so that they could hold? Because it's funny. In one sense, you don't want to tell people because you want this to be a personal sacrifice. You want to brag about it. But on the other hand, I'm like, if I don't tell people, I know I won't follow through with it.
Yeah,
so I'm going to need their accountability and shaming.
I would just tell my typical drinking buddies, because I just didn't want the constant like, oh, you're not drinking today? And I would still want to like hang out when people would go out on a Friday.
Yeah, I think the first time I met you, was that in Nova Scotia when we were given that conference?
It's possible.
That was a long time ago.
We definitely did that conference together.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember thinking you're so weird.
Yeah, and you were right about that. Yeah.
No, was that the night we went to that there was like that live music at that bar under?
Oh my gosh. We had
Dave
tequila.
Bograntz was there.
We drank
They're
tequila.
singing. Oh no, that was with Sean Forrest. I left
Sean
before that.
Forrest,
That was that
what
same
a
night, but
guy.
I left before that. I go. So that was after my stroke, and I go to bed early.
I
Man.
wanted to ask you about that. Yeah. So there you go.
About what the
Your
stroke?
stroke. Yeah. How did that happen? And what was that like?
Yeah, so I mean, it was really one of the weirdest and greatest things that ever happened to me because it definitely happened in like the height of when I thought I was like hot stuff, you know, like I was 31. I was 31 when it happened. And and I was still, I think, traveling every weekend, doing a lot of stuff. You know, and whether you have that tension we were talking about earlier or not, like, you know, there's still a part of you, you're like, I'm spreading the gospel, I'm doing this thing, you know, like, and it was such a kick in the pants to me in the sense that, like, you know, everything, you know, all of us, like, I think if we had to say, like, oh, yeah, you know, I know the Lord doesn't love me because of Pints with Aquinas, or the Lord doesn't love me because I could sing like an angel, or I could dance, or whatever, because I'm good looking. You know, there's still a part of us that's like, but, you know, I'm contributing something to the kingdom.
I don't understand what you mean.
Okay. So,
I know the Lord doesn't love me because of...
Well, like, I mean, do you, if someone said to you, like, Matt, do you think the reason Jesus loves you is because you do Pints with Aquinas?
Because of that. I see what you mean.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. And I'd give the standard
You'd be
answer.
like, no.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah.
it's something that's cool or whatever. But there's a part of you inside that you're like, this is something like, I'm not saying it's the reason God loves me, but you're like, my motivation behind this is like, I want the Lord to be glorified. I want the Lord to know, like, this is what I want my life to count for and all that kind of stuff. But like for me, like at 31, I was driving home from a conference, and I took my I picked up my family and went to get something to eat. And in the middle of driving, like I came to a stop sign, and it was like, just like that, like I lost my vision, and then I had this bad headache. I had to sit down on the middle of the road.
What does that mean? Lost your vision? Is it like
I couldn't see. It was just
all?
like, I
Just
was like
went
telling my
black?
wife, I was like, man, I'm like really dizzy. She's like, well, let's switch. And so I got out of the car, and somewhere between switching from the driver to the passenger seat, just
thank God you went on a
everything
highway.
went black. I know, dude. And I sat down in the middle of the road, and I was like, I can't see anything, you know. And I don't remember much about that day, but I eventually started throwing up just because, you know, I was having a stroke. And but like I lost my vision, and then I couldn't talk right. And then my whole left side of my body for a few weeks was paralyzed. And, you know, like at that, they don't know, like, well, you're going to get that back or whatever. And, and, you know, there's still like deficits like in my body and my life and stuff like that. But the amazing / bizarre / horrible / amazing, you know, amazing in a good way that happened was that, like, I came to know the Lord in such a different way, where it's just like, well, I'm not relying on, I remember being at a holy hour after that later in that year, and I stopped doing the Steubenville conferences. I stopped traveling. I just stopped all that. I was just like, you know, in a depression way, like, which I started struggling with depression in a real serious way after that, and still do, you know, like here and there. But, you know, started like kind of thinking of like it, like, well, nothing matters, you know, like, oh, well, I got so many letters and people donated and all this stuff in the hospital. I would just throw it away. You know, I got to tell my wife, I was like, no, these people don't care. Nothing matters. You know, like, I just say, you know, food would come in the hospital. And then again, I was like out of my mind, you know, but I would take the tray, throw it against the wall. I was just, you know, part of it was just, there's a craziness, but part of it was just kind of felt like nothing really matters. And then, you know, sitting in this holy hour, like with the Lord, and saying like, well, you know, if say 40% of my brain died, or 20%, whatever it was that died, you know, like, well, at what point does a certain percentage die enough that I'm not me anymore? Or like, if my personality changes enough, like, when am I not me, and why do you love, you know, just the question to ask to the Lord, like, why do you love me? it's really like a bear all put it on the table. Like, why do you love me? Because all of us could be like, well, the Lord loves us because we belong to him and stuff like that. But, all of us are like, but I'm sure it pleases his heart that I could tell a good story or that I could speak or that I could sing or I do whatever it is, and all those things like were taken away from me, like my movement, my speech, my confidence. I felt very like unconfident. I felt depressed for a long time. And I felt like I was always like the life of the party guy that would just be silly, and all those things were gone. And then you come before like the Lord and you're like, why do you love me? Like I can't offer you anything. Like I can't even, like, I'm not even good at being me anymore, and there was like like just this profound experience, like for me, of the Lord saying like, I just love you because you're mine, and you start to think of your own kids. Like if I had a kid that was, talking to me like a few years before that was saying like, oh, they didn't feel as talented at this or that as the other kids. And, you as a father, you start to think like, man, I don't care if you're good at basketball, if you're good at the violin or you're this or that. You're like, I just love you because you're my son, like, and there was a sense of that, like a very personal thing that happened with me, where I started really realizing like, man, the Lord, and it wasn't just like something I accepted. I had a really hard time accepting that the Lord loves me outside of who I am, what I could do, what I could offer. Because then you start asking anyone, well, why does Matt want to hang out with me? Because I'm fun, because I can make him laugh, because I'm silly. What if I'm not like that anymore? What if I'm depressed now? It's like all these existential questions, and it started to really burn a hole through me, like to the fact that like, I mean, to the point that I just felt like I was just ashes, and you like bring this to the Lord and this way. And then I felt like the Lord kind of built that back up in my life, who I am, built up our relationship, not based on being on a stage or on a microphone or being positive or whatever. And it was a significant encounter in my life. And it's definitely there's been hard things about it, but it was definitely
how did your view of Kate's love? What was that like? Her loving you through this the best way she could?
Well, it was funny because I remember I'd have to go down for different surgeries or like cardiograms, different angiograms, different things like tests when I was in the hospital for these couple months. And my brain wasn't working right, but I would always tell the doctor, like, I got to get back. Like my wife's going to leave me. Like I just kept thinking like, dude, I have nothing to offer her. And I kept thinking like, just in my injured brain, like she's going to leave me for someone who has something to offer. And then I was like trying whenever a friend would come and visit, my friend Brandon or my brother Ben or my buddy Tim, like I'd be like, hey, you got to marry Kate. I'd always tell them, and they're like, no, you guys are married, like, and I would, but I would try, I was like trying to say like I have nothing to like offer her, it's like her taking care of like a handicapped kid. Like I just like, and I can't imagine.
And at this point, you don't know how much you're going to recover, right?
Right. And she would always talk about that. Like she would ask people not to laugh because I would always do crazy stuff, throw my food, tip stuff over, say mean stuff to the nurse, just stuff.
Do you remember this?
No, well, I remember like it was a dream. She said I would always say to her, like, she'd be like, Bob, you can't throw your food on the wall. I'd say like, it's just a dream. And she would say like, it's not a dream. And I would say, she said I would do like that in my bed, in my bed, So like, there's like that dream-esque part of it that I remember, like there I felt like there were no consequences and like everything was foggy. But a lot of it I don't remember. But I do remember, like I probably had a solid 2 years, 18 months to 2 years of just a dark depression after that, and she was so good to me during that. I can't, as much as like you're worried about like, oh, I'm not going to walk again or I'm going to be this again. I can't imagine yet knowing like my spouse might never be able to talk to me like an adult again, or even after my speech improved or some of my like mental capacity improved. Like I felt like I'd want to like sit in the dark all the time, or like, just stuff like that. And I can't imagine like, what that was like for a spouse, like just, we were talking about this once, me and you, but just the idea of, suffering with someone through sickness and stuff. It's a tough, it's a tough thing. So, I really like, she was a champ going through that, but it was something like I would never, I would never change. Like there's so many things in my life that I like look at before my stroke and after my stroke. And, for most people, like it's insignificant, but like for me, there were just so many things spiritually, and even in my relationship with my wife, that like changed forever after that, just because you're really like stripped of everything. And, but it also gave me like a soft spot in my heart for so many other people who deal with stuff. You realize like, that was hard for me, but like people who deal with depression in a much more severe way or have a physical handicap that's much more severe than what I have, like all of a sudden, like it definitely softened my heart, like broke my heart in a way that like it's changed, who I am, like pastorally. And, even with at that time, Vagabond Missions was young, but it definitely gave me a greater capacity for the broken and understanding the broken and my heart breaking for the broken. It's like I think like, it's like if you were, it's like when you see two veterans of war, talk to each other, like there's a certain understanding there that they know, even if it's not the same exact war, they know what it's like to have been through war. There's that, I think that part of my heart changed, like where you just, your heart really softens and breaks for, others who have experienced brokenness in a tough way. And with the inner city ministry, it definitely was a huge asset, that the Lord used,
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. I often think that my wife's love is sort of like a prophet in the sense that it points to God's love for me, because there's definitely times in my marriage that still happen where I'm like, why would you love me? I don't understand, because like when you first get engaged, or when you first get married, you can't, there's a natural front that's up, just like you have a front with everybody. You want to put your best self forward, but that you can't keep it up. It doesn't work. Eventually it drops. And my wife has seen that in me, and it scared me. It's stuff I wish I didn't have to deal with, parts of my personality that I'm ashamed of or embarrassed about that naturally come forth. At times I'm an absolute jerk to her and things like that. And I'm shocked that she actually continues to love me in it, and it's a reminder of the Lord's love. But
yeah, and there's a freedom there that, I mean, you're right. It is prophetic in that it mirrors the Lord's love. But there's a freedom in being like, wow, I have nothing to offer, and you love me still, or like you see me at my worst. Like you see me in my poverty, and you love me.
Yeah, that's it.
And there's just something there that's like, man, I can't think of something that's more. I think when the young man, like, you think like nothing could be more bonding than like sexual intimacy, but like really nothing could be more bonding than like seeing each other at your worst and just, like going through that, loving each other through war.
Yeah.
Because that's really like a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Do people, because I only met you after your stroke. Do people say that you're different, very different before and after?
Yeah, my friends that knew me well before, not that I'm not still weird or silly, but like I think my friends that knew me, I grew up with or went to college with, I was I feel like I was the bar closer. I'd want to be there till the end. I had major FOMO. I would want to be the life of the party. And now I think there's a part of me that's, I've definitely, and everyone, this happens in everyone's life in different ways anyway, but like I was a super extrovert, to like my life has kind of come around. Not that I'm not an extrovert at all anymore, but I like going to bed early and I like waking up early, and I like Irish goodbyes where I sneak out of a party, and I like to not have to be the funny guy in a party, and also I know, like those who know me closely and if, like walked with me, like when I've like, through depression, I think that's something that, and like, cause it's weird, like for me, like that wasn't something I dealt with as a young person, but started dealing with in my 30s. That was just a weird thing. And so I think, those that knew me before and have walked through that, I mean, I think they've been very patient and very encouraging and stuff like that. And then there's some like physical things that like I used to run a lot, I used to like to run marathons and, but I can't run at all anymore. I couldn't run across the room. My like legs, my spine, there's just some issues there that I just, that are different, but you start to like, you're like, well, this is who I am. And that's that, but I definitely feel like, gravity, like in the soul is a good thing. I mean, I feel like there's just, like I had a spiritual director once that was just like, this was in a specific situation. I was trying to decide how do I argue with this one person. And he was like, you'll never regret humility, and what he was saying, like, as he went on to explain was like the graces of humility, even humiliation, like aren't going to be like, inefficacious. Like, like they'll always be something, like the Lord will use it even if we're kicking and screaming a little bit, like, so don't be afraid of the humility. And I mean, that's been true for me, in my life, and people deal with much worse, but yeah. So I think it's been, even as friendships, you learn to love someone as their life changes, even in a weird way, So.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Well, what we'll do, I think, is just take a quick break. And then when we come back, I'd love to ask you some stories about what's going on with Vagabond missions. And I'm sure you've got some profound stories of healing and conversion. And I also want to talk about how, in the church, there does feel like there's this perpetual divide, or at least in my lifetime, between conservatives who are super into, say, liturgy being celebrated well and sexual morality, and then people on the other side who are like, we should love the poor probably, but their defect sometimes is this not a real concern for orthodoxy or liturgy or things like that, and how we can maybe bridge that. So cool. Thanks.
Yeah.
And we are back. Hey, if you haven't heard about Exodus 90, go check it out at exodus90.com/Matt. I'm pretty sure that's the link. Remind me. I'm pretty sure it is. exodus90.com/Matt. Exodus 90 is a 90-day ascetical program just for men who, over the course of 90 days, journey with a small group of other brothers. They read the book of Exodus during those 90 days. They give up things like warm showers and alcohol and snacks between meals and unnecessary entertainment like television or YouTube or anything like that. And they devote themselves to prayer. And it's a very powerful thing. And on January 17th, there's going to be hundreds of men around the world who are all going to be embarking upon Exodus 90 together so that they can arrive at Easter Sunday. That's why it starts on January 17th. So if you're at all interested in this, and if you're a dude, go check out exodus90.com/Matt, exodus90.com/Matt. You can read the stories of real men who've gone through this and have said how it's been a blessing to their life. And again, it's not like an isolated program. You're journeying with a group of men for 90 days. And so it's a real cool bonding experience as well. exodus90.com/Matt. Have you ever done it?
I've never done it. I tried to do it a couple times, and my wife made me stop doing
work,
it.
Man. It's hard.
She said like I'm a little bitch when like I try and fast. So she wouldn't let me do it.
What do you fast from then when you fast, if you are a little?
Well, I don't mind like the fasting. Like I like doing the intermittent fasting, like like don't eat after dinner till lunch or whatever. But like some of the stuff, like the cold showers, like just different.
People say that's just brutal.
Yeah.
For me, what I ended up doing was just not showering much.
Wow.
And that's not good. You see what I'm saying? So it's like, because you start doing cold showers every day. And you're like, I don't like this. And so you start every other day, every third day. Like, okay, this isn't good.
Yeah. My wife, this is again another story for keeping you in check. But like, especially after having health problems, she doesn't want me to do like extreme fast. I remember the year right after my stroke, I was convinced that what God wanted me to do was sleep for Lent, was sleep in the alley behind my house every night.
Wow.
And she was so mad, and she finally shut it down. She wouldn't let me do it, dude.
Did you do it?
No, I was like, I was all ready to do it, dude. I had my sleeping bag in the garage. I was like, I'll still hang out with you guys until the nighttime, and then I'll go sleep in the alley.
And I live on your street, or I live on that street.
Yeah,
and that's not a pleasant alley. I'm sure to sleep in.
But I was like, this is solidarity with the poor, man. Like there's so much about it that I was like pumped up about, and it was a big fail. But it's good. My wife probably saved my life.
Yeah, probably. So this idea of like liberals and conservatives, which are two very unhelpful terms often, but like it's, when you read the Gospels and you read them honestly, there's some pretty scary things that are said by our Lord for those of us who don't love the poor. And if I look at my any given week, I don't really have a lot of interactions with the poor, and I'm not going out of my way to love them. Now, maybe that's too harsh because there's many ways to love the poor. So I try to notice and chat with people here on 4th Street, for example. But I find that very often what we do is we reinterpret our Lord's words to avoid the responsibility that they seem to indicate. So we'll say things like, well, my kids are my poor and I got to love them. It's like, well, yeah, and that's true. But what else could we be doing here? And, it's like I don't like having encounters with homeless people. I don't enjoy that. I try to press through it and do it anyway. And I know I'm not alone in that, but I want to be uncomfortable. Like I want to get better at that. I think another thing we often do is we just could reinterpret our Lord's words, and so whenever our Lord says things like love the poor and give to those who beg from you, it's like we just think about all the things that doesn't mean. We're like, well, it doesn't mean like give them cash because they could use it for something, and then you're like, okay, so you've just totally gotten out of loving the poor.
Yeah.
I was here on 4th Street a few months back, and I was coming out. I was going into Euros. No, not Euros. Yorgos. And he said, "There's a bloke at the front. He's trying to sell me his sunglasses." And they were really crappy sunglasses. Yeah. I really didn't want them. And I said, no, but I can buy you breakfast. You have breakfast? He went, no, that's cool. I'm like, okay. Well, so I'm glad I did that. But yeah, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, this is a hot topic for me. Like, I feel like in my heart, because it really makes me aggravated. Like just this idea that we're in these camps of like, well, you either vote for Trump or you're like anti-racism, or you're like you love the liturgy or you love the poor. It's like these, and you're alluding to this, but it's like it is a really bad thing. Like even just like I was watching a Jordan Peterson video yesterday, and I know he doesn't mean to be divisive. I think he's like a genius.
Is Bob in the right place here, or does he need to scoot somewhere? Neil, just okay. Good. Sorry, I didn't mean to catch you off.
No.
I just also didn't want to have you out of focus for the next 20.
Is this all live? Is this embarrassing right now?
No, not at all. We do this all the time. That's the beauty about being live. All these awkward moments.
I'm so sorry.
Jordan Peterson.
Watching him, and I think it's a disservice. Like he'll say like the social justice warriors, or like I noticed once when I was going to be on here before, and you had something about social justice, and someone commented like, "Oh yeah, social justice," thumbs down. Like it's a really sad thing that like we've gotten to these camps where the reality is like the Catholic Church has always been a champion of the poor. Like, like we wouldn't have
social justice is her word.
Right. Like, so like the preferential option for the poor, hospitals, schools, like even talking about Vagabond missions, this isn't something new that we're like, what as Catholics, like we better do something for the poor. Like the Catholic Church has been a champion of the poor. Like if you want to see like the guts of the Catholic Church, like, in our country, like look at what she's done with the poor. And so I think it's a really sad thing, like when it becomes in camps, like you can't do both, like someone who
cares for the poor or social justice, doesn't care about anything else.
Right.
You know, but you said like the thing that like is on my heart the most, and it's just the Lord's words, because there's lots of commentaries or books or whatever we can read, but the ultimate litmus thing is like, well, what did God say about it, you know? And it's like ultimately the main thing that Jesus says, like, who's going to go to heaven and hell, is like, well, when I was hungry and lonely and thirsty and in prison, like, were you there? You know, like, he didn't say like, you know, did you convince people to receive on the tongue, you know, or did you make sure that you know, read these books? You know, he just said like, did you help me when I was like at my worst? And so that to me is a pretty, you know, stinking big catalyst, you know. But the other thing that I because we've talked about this before, you're like, well, you know, like, what do we get wrong sometimes when it comes to the poor and stuff like that? And it's tough, because I don't think, I think it could be a both and. I definitely don't think I'm not a believer that you can only be conservative, or, well, I mean, I get the conservative liberal, like the debates, arguments, you can't be Republican and Democrat or whatever, but like, I don't think you can be like, well, you're either a faithful Catholic or you like are a social justice warrior, you know. Like, I think like when we look at saints and we look at like the heart for Christ in the lowly and the broken, like it really should be a both and thing. And but for me, it always comes down to what we started this entire podcast with, is that idea of like when your heart falls in love, you know. And so I'm not saying that you haven't had that happen, but I think that some of the things you're describing there, like with the guy selling the sunglasses, like maybe the annoying guy begging outside of maybe an annoying drunk guy begging outside of a store or whatever. Like, I'm not saying that, you know, like I enjoy those things, or, you know, I'm immediately like, you know, holding that guy in my arms, you know, but like there is a difference like between this like initial encounter of, like, there is an ugliness and a smelliness and a like a disgustingness of Christ in the poor. Like, you know, and I'm not saying that the poor are disgusting, you know, this has been my life, but like to not acknowledge that there's a stench, like, you know, like it's just, it's foolishness. Like, you know, what happens is that when we move beyond what we see, you know, that like, well, of course, if I saw Christ, I would serve Christ, but I don't see Christ right now. I don't smell Christ right now. I don't, you know, like my senses are pushing me away from this person. But what happens, like, that changes everything, is like when our heart like falls in love, when our heart breaks, like all of a sudden it doesn't matter anymore. You know what I mean? Like, and there's just been times like for me raising our family, like we were just talking about this, about this a couple of days ago with one of my kids who's older now. Like, we would have these two, this couple, Jimmy and Lydia. They were like a homeless couple. They would come a lot of times to Christmas, Thanksgiving at our house when my kids were growing up. And there was a sense about them that was like, there was a certain smell, like it was just this BO and nicotine smell. Like, it was the smell of poverty. Like, I feel like, and if I could think about locally here, and they were one of them was pretty severely schizophrenic. And I remember one time the woman Lydia asking me to shave her face, like with a razor after dinner, you know, because she like had a lot of like hair on her face. And I remember like, I just, for whatever reason, like it was a really difficult thing for me. Like, we were on my front porch and I was shaving her face, and you know, like there was just like everything naturally about me was like repulsed. It was like, this is so disgusting, and she smells bad, and I know they had bed bugs and you know, all this kind of stuff, but like they're ultimately like, and it wasn't just like a, you know, an immediate thing, but like there was like a falling in love process with this person that, you know, I feel like I really did encounter Christ, like even in her mental illness, that sometimes like I think we have to lean into a little harder as people who don't now you I feel like you live in an area of town like where you're going to encounter people that are different than you, and that's like what I like about not the suburbs, like is like, I hate when you go to a suburbs area and it's like there's a neighborhood that says like from the 220s up or from the 400s up or from, it's like not only do you have to not live around people that aren't like you, but like the people in the exact like economic bracket as you live in your cul-de-sac, Then the nice thing about living in a city, like and living where you live, is that you're gonna be forced to rub elbows, like with people that are different than you.
Yeah.
And in that, I feel like it is a long-term thing, like I think the greatest thing that we can do to really experience Christ in the poor is to have long-term relationships with the poor and with the neighbor. And sometimes it isn't the physically poor. Sometimes and I'm not saying to the extent like you said, like, well, sometimes it's just our kids, but like, here's an example. Like when I was living on your street, when we were first starting Vagabond, at first I just had this tremendous itch to like, we gotta like do something radical. We were thinking about moving to Africa, then we thought about moving to Mexico, and we're all this kind of, we were going back and forth. When do we do it? Do we do it this year? Do we do it next year? How are we gonna do it? And I had this horrible thing happen where my neighbor, literally my next door neighbor to the left of me, I saw her and I was going out to my car the morning after we were having this big long discussion. And she said, she's like, Bob, I don't want to say her son's name, but she's like, my son last night, she's like, he tried to hang himself and I had to cut him down from the ceiling. And, I saved him, but she was crying. And I felt like it was like such one of these moments, like where you're like, my gosh, dude, all I'm doing is like fantasizing about being in Africa and, cuddling some, kid in a village with rice, when my next door neighbor is literally dying. Yeah. Like I see him every day. He's drinking a beer when I get home from work or get home from the store on his porch. And I may go up and talk to him once in a while, but like, here's someone literally the Lord is saying like, hey, why don't you talk to this guy? He's 18 years old and he likes talking to you and maybe God is really working there. I feel like those are those moments like where Jesus is saying the sheep and the wolves, like this is one of those moments where Christ like needs us and doesn't need us to just run in and put on YouTube or read a book or, it's like there. So I don't know. I mean, I go in a lot of different ways there, but like what I'm saying is I think the big, like the things you're saying, I don't think make you like a bad, like, oh, well, this is actually, like you'd be a fool not to acknowledge like there's some really messy things that come with loving the poor or loving the homeless, loving, that kind of a person. But I think what changes everything is like when we really ask the Lord, like, do it in here, and show me, like, let me look with that kind of a vision and let this part of my heart like become engaged so that it's not a task,
Yeah, even as you're speaking, someone's coming to mind who I'm not loving. And I know just through talking with you, the Lord's calling me to love this person. And the reason I don't want to love this person in the sense of like engaging them, if I'm to be just totally honest, is I don't want to get involved with somebody who might want to get more involved than me than I want to get involved with them. Like if I strike up a conversation with this particular individual that I'm thinking like, am I going to be able to cut it off, or am I going to be able to keep that person at a distance from my family? Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And thankfully, I mean, I do think it helps being married. I mean, I think that helps, like, with boundaries, because I mean, it's a huge, the fact that you're acknowledging that, like, there is a part of that is fear based. That's, saying like, don't do this. It's, there could be a part of like the evil one saying like, well, don't get involved with the poor because it's just gonna, ruin this or that. But there is a part of it too that's healthy. I mean, like the idea of having boundaries is a good thing. And there were times in our family where like we missed the boat on that side. Like there was a time we had a homeless kid live with us. He was a meth addict, and I mean, I was staying up every night with him as he's going through these withdrawals. Like kind of neglecting my kids. He ended up stealing a bunch of stuff, you know, a year later after living with us and running off and, you know, getting back into drugs. But like, there was a part of me that was like really erring on the other side that wasn't healthy, and I don't think was what the Lord wanted either. Where it's just like, I think the naive, like noob side of us is like saying like nothing, like just you're all in all the time, and like there's no boundaries, and that's not correct either. Like you know, there's definitely a boundaries portion to that. So I do think that pushes people away from taking the risk.
Yeah.
The idea that you're like, this is going to ruin my life, or this is going to ruin my family time, you know. But like we would start to like there'd be times where, you know, we'd have kids over our house almost every day, or people from whatever the city over our house almost every day. But there'd be a time where I'd say like, hey, so and so, like we're gonna have some family time now. I need you to go, and they would just be like, oh, okay. You know, like it was like weird, but it was just like we just had to have those boundaries. And sometimes I think the thought that, you know, really dealing with messy things means having no boundaries. It does hold us back from doing it. You know, when like I think maybe the Lord is asking us like, no, I do want you to do this, but it's not gonna.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me.
There's a freedom there, like where I feel like even I tell like first year missionaries, like do not let this consume you to the point that like they're already making no money, like trying to live in solidarity with the poor. Do not give every penny you have also to them where you can't buy dinner now, or like you like sacrifice your relationship with your girlfriend for this, because that's not what the Lord is asking, you know. Like, so I do think sometimes like we think there's a both, or there's a either or, like, you know, like when we look at like, could you possibly do something radical for the Lord? Like it's because it's all or nothing. But I think the biggest shame is like what you're saying. Like it's just this idea that it's like, it's very politicized, you know, and it's just like, you have to be one or the other. And it's like, you could love the liturgy and you could vote for Trump and you could do all this and you could still love the poor and be anti-racism and like it doesn't have to be like we only do this, you know, because I think that
it's like you're taking your cues from CNN or Fox News instead of the gospel in a sense.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah, I think like I'm just, you know, thinking to myself as we talk here, I'm like, at the very least, I need to get to know the names of the people I walk past every day here on this street, you know? I mean, we're kind of blessed to be in Steubenville where we have the poor. It's funny we say the poor too, because you're poor, I'm poor in different ways, you know? And that's not to downplay material poverty, but it's also to acknowledge the full scope of poverty. There's a beautiful line in the Psalms I read recently that says, he has never despised the poverty of the poor. And my heart just melted at that, because I see my own poverty and insufficiency, things I'm ashamed of, and he doesn't despise me. He loves me. You know, like he's merciful towards those wretched parts of me that I'm not merciful towards. So maybe feel free to speak to that. But I also wanted to say, like so much of our American life, or maybe people watching this from other countries, is segregated, you know, geographically. So there might be people watching this who are like, I literally I don't walk past poor people. Like, I don't know what you mean by poor people. What am I to do to love the poor?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think, unfortunately, you know, I don't think you have to go far. I just can't think of any state in, you know, the United States where there's a part of a city or that state where you're like, it'd be 12 hours before I'd find someone in need, you know, like, I don't know what you want me to do. You know, it's like, there's always an across town, you know, and in across town, maybe it's, like, volunteering, like, at a food shelter, maybe it's, you know, volunteering at a pregnancy center, you know what I mean? Like, but I feel like to think that, yes, like in my immediate life, there's not someone who is very different than me or very, poor compared to me or whatever. That may be the case, but I don't think anyone has to go real far. Like whether that means once I get to the office, like I know that the person who works in the office next to me is going through a divorce, and that's the poverty there that the Lord wants me to like walk with them through this. Or maybe it is saying, you know what, on a Saturday, like I'm gonna start just volunteering at the food pantry. Like it's an hour to Pittsburgh, but I'm gonna go there and do that. Like I just don't like. I do think like we make strategic efforts, certain things in our life. I'm gonna take time this Advent and read this book. Or I'm gonna this summer I'm gonna repaint my house. Like we make time for things that are important. I'm not saying that like. It's easy to engage in loving the poor, but I don't think that I just don't think there's anyone who's like I couldn't possibly think of like someone in need that I couldn't be called to, or that I couldn't be called to make a conscious decision. My gosh, maybe it's going to be like, as a family, like we're going to all give up our morning Starbucks routine and we're going to send that money to Vagabond, or we're going to send that money to like our local cities, Catholic charities. You know what I mean? Like there's always something we could do. Obviously the best thing I think in a lot of ways is like when we have face-to-face encounter, because in those moments, oftentimes I think we encounter Christ.
That's right. Because I think a lot of the kind of charity has been relegated to middlemen. Like I'm going to take my bag of crappy clothes down to this place, and that's me loving the poor, but I'm not encountering them,
Without a doubt. Yeah, that's why I always like with my kids, one thing I've been like thankful with Vagabond, or even living where we live in a small city that has a lot of poverty pockets, is to say, hey, I would make them tithe, like if, they're getting $150 paycheck, $15, and I would say I have no problem if they're like, there'll be certain kids like within Vagabond they'll become close with, and they're like, oh, I'm going to buy so-and-so's basketball shoes like this season. Like there is something really satisfying about like that transaction as opposed to the middleman transaction. It's not always an option, but I do think that there are ways we can be creative there, like with tithing or with our time or whatever. And it might not just be like the village in Africa. It might be the person in the office next to us who isn't physically poor, but like if we took them out for lunch, it would be a great mercy to just be able to share time, to share a meal with that person. Like I feel like that would be a better use of your tithe, than to, put it in the box outside of 7-Eleven for site for the whatever,
I think a big part of people, and myself included, not wanting to kind of engage in interactions like that is I don't like feeling uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. We have a super chat from Canate of the Mind, which is related. He says, I have an internalized elitist mindset and I want to be charitable, but I have a hard time overcoming this sense of revulsion. What should I do?
Yeah. Did they hear you read that, or do I need to reread it?
No, it should have come through.
Yeah. So, first of all, I just love the honesty, because I mean, you said it earlier, but it's like, if loving the poor means pretending not to be repulsed by stench or by drunkenness, that's not what the Lord's calling us to do.
Sure, sure.
Or to pretend it's not there. I mean, He loves us in our poverty.
For
and
sure.
we're to love others in their poverty, and that poverty is a real thing. And the reason it's so sacrificial is because it's a real thing.
Yeah.
So it's not about pretending it's not there.
Yeah. And I agree. And it's also like the Lord has asked all of us to do certain things. He's asked all of us to evangelize. So it's not just for priests, nuns, and missionaries, or people with podcasts. He's asked all of us to engage with the poor, So I think the logical thing is to realize that the Lord's going to know that some people aren't extroverts, that some people have OCD, that like I couldn't possibly like touch this person in the like what's going on with them physically right now, because like the OCD in my brain is not going to allow me to touch. You see what I'm saying? So there's like that, even little things like that are a reality, but it doesn't mean I think that the Lord is taking the back of your head and forcing you're going to do this, you're going to kiss this person's wounds, but I do think it may demand for that person who has this I don't know the exact words, elitist or repulsion or whatever. Like, I do think it demands, okay, well, this beckons you to dig deeper, you know? So you're going to have to dig a little bit deeper than, you know, the person who's outside of this building when we get done here, you know? You might have to really start asking the Lord, who is it like in my parish that I really need? Maybe there's a greeter that welcomes everyone when I walk into mass that is just so weird and no one really talks to, or everyone kind of laughs under their breath at. Maybe that's my person, you know, like I'm just going to stop and talk to them a little bit at the end of every, you know what I mean? So I don't think it has to be, you know, like everyone's, you know, face to the wall of like, no, everyone has to, you know, kiss the wounds of the poor. I just think it's going to look different. It just may, you know, require a little bit more, you know, depth digging for
even just like to put it simply and maybe not adequately, but like to love people different than you. Mm-hmm. You know, to love people who you meet and you're like, what the heck is with that dude? And you might have a legitimate thing, but it's like, well, love them. Don't make fun of them.
Totally. And for me, I guess like there's a freedom in loving someone like that, where it's like, it's kind of fun, where like there's teens I could think of in Vagabond that like their mental capacity is very small, you know, and that certainly doesn't mean that the Lord doesn't want to like it's not like our faith as Catholics like is only for people who understand the Summa, you know, like well, what about someone who has a mental, you know, disability? Like, does that mean like that person can't experience the love of God? You know, well, they're not going to experience in the same way that maybe like we're like, look at this point, like this is really, this unlocks something in my mind and my heart, you know, but to me, there's a freedom of sometimes like that I love, you know, that missionary activity with the poor, with the broken, even with the handicap, like where you say like, you know, I'm just, all I have to do here, all I'm required to do is just sit and to smile and to love and just to be present. Like I don't have to explain transubstantiation. I don't have to explain philosophy. All I'm doing is just smiling back at them, you know, but there's something there that is valuable and important, you know, not just for them, but for me, you know? And that's why I think it's good that we do force ourselves into some kind of uncomfortable, like what you saying, it makes me uncomfortable. Like, and I get that's always going to be a part of life, but I think like we've got to force ourselves to it, or we're never going to do it, you know?
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. Yeah. Loving the other. But I love what you said about like, these are Christ's words. These aren't my words. It's like, do we want to be faithful to Christ or not? We so often take the words of Christ and talk about what they don't mean and never get around to saying what they do mean.
Yeah, all the stories like the sheep and the goats, or or like the rich young ruler, you know, who walks away empty, or easier for, you know, a camel to go through the eye of a needle than you know, and like, it's just so easy to be like, well, what he really means here is this and that. And it's just like, well, what if he really meant what he said? You know what I mean? Like there's a part of that that's like, it is a little, I don't know, like I'm not a fire and brimstone guy, but I've been in arguments with enough people where, like I think at the end of the day, first of all, it's like, well, whatever. Then don't serve the poor. I mean, well, you'll I mean, it's between you and Christ to some extent, but like I'm just saying, like the real clear ones that like Christ said, well, this is how it's going to be decided. Like said this, you know. So it's got to be. It's got to be important. You know what I mean? If that's what Christ's example has been.
Amen,
you know.
For those who might be interested in learning more about Vagabond or joining as a missionary, just real quick, like how would they do that, and who are you looking for, and what should they expect?
So on vagabondmissions.com, we take applications on there, and people can donate on there. People can watch videos on there of who we are, what we do, and there's some really cool stories on there. Like we're even starting to have now, and this is like one of my, like I feel like the most beautiful things that I've seen in the ministry is kids who we met on the street who had no faith, no hope, no whatever, went through, became a part of the church, were baptized, were mentored by the group. And now, instead of like a lot of, I think like the mentality now is like, if you can get out of poverty or you can get out of whatever, like you run as far as you can and do something else, but now they want to invest their lives back into being missionaries, and they're going to try and save as many as they can save. Like there's something really beautiful about that. So we have a whole bunch of missionaries that are in that boat now. But really, what we're trying to do is hire anyone who's willing to take. I'd say the main age group that we're hiring are people that are like right out of college. Sometimes people take a gap year before they go to college. Sometimes they take a gap year in the middle of college, but there is this beauty that I always like when I go to a college and I make a pitch. What I say is like, you're given this small, brief, weird window where you still have the passion and the ability to do something wild, but you don't have mortgage payments yet. You don't have a bunch of kids, and there's something different in me saying like, hey, if I make the wrong decision, and if I'm living in a van down by the river, not that that's what our missionaries do, but if I'm living in a van down by the river in order to, do this thing, it's not going to matter so much as it would if I screw up my whole family and my wife and I miss all these more, but I'm like, you're given this one small, weird, wild window. See that alliteration?
Yeah, that was good.
I should have my own
One
podcast.
weird wild. That could be the name of your podcast.
Yeah, it could be one weird wild window. To do something like extraordinary with your life. Before like, and it really matters.
It must change the way you forever, just how you engage with the people.
I have so many like people that have written me or talked to me, after their time as a missionary that have said like, this has given perspective to my entire life. There's some married couples that did it for a year or two or 3 or 4, whatever. And they said like, we like Paul, the whole idea, like I know how to live with nothing. I know how to live with a lot, and they said like, we know how to live very simply, like we know where the church is hurting, and it gives you context to your life where sometimes I think even just a single person coming out of college, maybe could go most of their life without having a face-to-face, bumping into the poor, and it just changes you. It just, even if it just breaks your heart a little bit to, in order to, to love Christ in that way, it's an awesome thing. And so our initial thing is to say like, could you give a year to the board? Like everyone like could give a year doing something crazy. We just talked about, me doing the stupid water thing for a year. It's like you do anything for a year, and imagine like the ripples eternally of your sacrifice as a missionary for a year. It just it goes on, and that's kind of I think a cool image to think like, me, those ripples of, not just this person's life, but generations, like, cause that's where we're at with poverty, like where maybe like us, like like I have girls come in sometimes that they're pregnant at 11. I had this one girl, she was pregnant at 11. Her mom had her at 12. Okay, so here her mom is 23, all right, and she's a grandmother. Like you think like, we talk about breaking the cycle of hopelessness with Vagabond Missions, and like that cycle is so much smaller for them than it is, I'd say, probably for me or you, and so, for generations, this is how this person has lived. And for generations, this person hasn't experienced hope. And for generations, no one's brought them to Christ. And so to imagine, that ripple is generations of people, like what you taking a chance as a missionary for a year or two, like it's so... It's like a mind-blowing concept to think of eternity like that and how that could ripple into eternity.
That's remarkable. Yeah. Gosh, my daughter's 11.
I know. It's crazy, right?
Breaks my heart.
Really. It's a wild thing. But yeah, there's lots of cool things on there, like where they're just sharing stories of like I said, some of those missionaries, some of the teens we work with, and how they've come to know hope is not just me getting out of poverty, or me getting out of the neighborhood, but like hope is me encountering God, you know?
Have you had to deal with maybe overcoming some bitterness towards movements in the church that seem to be focused only on kind of suburban kind of kids, like Life Teen or Steubenville? You know?
Sure.
Because I know sometimes you'll bring some of your kids to a Steubenville conference, and I wonder what that's like for them. And I wonder if you've ever had to have you ever felt a sort of bitterness towards why aren't we looking to the peripheries?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I mean, to answer it honestly, like, yes, like there have been times, and I think as a more immature like guy, like there's been times where I'm angry with Life Teen, or I'm angry with Franciscan University, angry with rich people in general, you know. But it's a very like ill-informed, like immature, like mindset. Like even just like there was this time where I just feel like no one should be rich, like no one should have anything more than what they need, you know. And then you start asking yourself questions. Well, like I bought shoes, like why didn't I just wear flip-flops, or why didn't I just, you know, it's like you could always push the envelope to where you're like, well, I should be doing more, you know, and I could be, you know, and the reality that like this isn't an intrinsic evil, you know, to have wealth and, you know, but, you know, like there are important decisions with what you do with that. And so in the same sense with like Life Teen or Steubenville conferences, you know, there was a time where I was thinking like, well, why aren't we going after like a different demographic of kids? It's all white suburban kids, and being so frustrated and angry with that. But then realizing, most people are pretty reasonable. And like when I would, those two specific groups, like if I would ask Life Teen or ask the university, hey, could we have 50 free spots to bring our kids to the youth conference? They're like, yeah, absolutely. You know what I mean? Like, could we bring our missionaries to this training thing for free? Absolutely. You know, I mean, like, so there is, I think there could be on both sides of the aisle, like, well, they would never, you know, they're just doing this. They don't care about this. And the reality is sometimes, like you said, about the person who maybe they just don't have the opportunity to encounter someone in their cul-de-sac, you know, but if they had the need, like maybe they would, you know? And so I've found that, like, I've been pleasantly surprised that when those groups have, like when we've asked, they've responded pretty generously. And that, so that, yes, I have had to get over that, but I feel like the main way I've gotten over it is by being humbled by, even people in my own life, you know, like times when we had nothing. And I mean, there was a year where I was really, it was a specific year where I was just frustrated with, you know, someone who has money, you know, like, oh, how could they, you know, really call themselves a Christian and be living a lot, you know, yet me and my wife at the time, we had 3 kids, and we had a 2-door Camry, and it had a different color hood on the front, and we would we'd put the car seats in the back, the 3 car seats, we'd push the 2 doors shut, they'd crumple up, you know, it was just a horrible. And this woman came out of my church at Houston at the time, and she's like, hey, and I had met this woman once before, but she's like, hey, me and my husband, like, we want to buy you guys a new car, you know, today. Like, why don't we take a ride? And we just drove over to this car place, and we left that crappy Camry there, and she wrote a check for $28,000. It's just, we bought a van, a brand new, you know, Sienna. And, but you know, it's like, those are the times I feel like sometimes where God humbles you, and you're like, it's just so easy to be like, well, those people over there, you know, the liberals or the rad trads or this or that, you know, this is how they are, and they're all jerks, you know, when in reality, sometimes like we need to like interact with each other more, because sometimes actually like their heart is really beautiful. Like they just maybe just haven't had the opportunity, you know? And so I've been humbled, and that's how, like, that's changed for me. It hasn't so much changed as like, well, I'm going to make a decision to really be more, you know, understanding of people that are in these positions where I've felt hurt before. You know, I just feel like God's really humbled me, where, you know, someone who I thought was an idiot or a jerk just did, you know, the most, you know, the sweetest thing for, you know,
I wonder how, like, your interaction with the poor has enabled you to receive care and love in your own poverty. Because, you know, I think I would much rather give to the poor than often receive help in my own poverty. Because if I'm giving help to the poor, then look at me, like I'm giving to the poor. But to be in a place of receiving that hospitality, it can be embarrassing, can't it? I mean, yeah, I'm sure there was a level of embarrassment for you when that woman bought your car and you got to drive over there and you want to show gratitude. And there's a sense in which, like you're vulnerable in that place,
Yeah, and there has been even now, our oldest daughter, she's 21, she's a missionary with Vagabond, which is cool. She did some other things, but she's with us now, and it's pretty fun. But like even trying to explain to a young missionary, like, you do have to adopt this kind of, like I remember reading, that scripture, like, you open your hand, desire, satisfy the desire of every living thing. It's in like the liturgy of the hours. Just this idea, this person was writing that, like, the posture of all of nature, like of all creation, even like the animal, is this. It's like the open hand. What I mean? Like, if it rains, then I'll drink. If it rains, then I'll grow. If the sun comes out, then I'll this. And if the harvest, if apples fall, then that's what the deer eat. Like, but for us as man, like, we have the option to take, and I'll provide for myself. Don't need you. Thanks anyway. But I feel like you are forced to, as a missionary, like, learn, to kind of come back to, like, okay, I'm just going to be grateful, and so, like, a young missionary, sometimes I just have to try and tell them, like, look, dude, if you're out and your buddy wants to buy your beer, or, someone wants to give you a grocery card for your family because you're a missionary, like, you just have to learn to say thank you. And it is it is a really humbling thing. But I feel like that is something that, the people that, like, are in need, they just get over that, and it's not something they have to say, like, well, I have to get over this and take it. Like, they're not trying to be humble. They're just trying not to starve to death, or they're just trying to be happy, so they'll take the free meal, and but I think for us who have the option, that's even more strange, to say, like, well, I could say no to this. I'll still be fine. There's something I think it does to your interior that's really,
it's like a rebuke to our self-sufficiency to receive the charity of another, isn't it? Yeah. Totally. I remember when my wife and I probably shared this story before. We're living in Canada. We were beneath the poverty line, nothing like the people you work with, but we couldn't afford meat or beer or anything, and it was rough, But I remember once, like, this friend of ours brought over a turkey because there was just one on special, and she thought maybe we'd want one. Dude, she left, and I was tearing up. Like, it meant the world to me. But, like, now if you brought me a turkey, I'd be like, shit, Bob, where am I going to put this freaking turkey? I don't have enough space in my fridge. I'd be upset. No, I wouldn't be upset. But it's just like, wow,
No, it is.
But she had a heart, that was like, she was attentive to the needs of those around her.
Yeah.
That's why she brought it. I mean, she probably said, well, it was on special. But, I mean, what she probably meant was, I know you guys aren't in the best place.
For sure. I had a friend who, she would say, like, oh, the only difference with, working with people in the inner city versus working with people in the suburbs, or however you'd want to split those two, is, like, us over here, like, we've learned how to hide, like, our poverty. We've learned how to hide our ugliness. It's just like, we might be struggling in our marriage, but we know how to put on a smile, and we have a nice car to get into, and we could dress nice, and we could put nice food on the table when, like, the guests come over. And even as a young person, I might be depressed with my life, but I could play these video games, and I have nice clothes, and my teeth are all straight, but in the inner city, or, like with the broken, oftentimes, like, they don't have the luxury of hiding their brokenness, and so it is something like, it's a weird thing, like, just this voluntarily be vulnerable, but that's, I think, the ultimate movement of a missionary. It's going against, it's like downward mobility, it's like you're trying to, that's why poverty, I think, is almost, there's some virtuous components of being poor, like, where I'm not hiding the fact that I need a savior. Like, it's right here.
There's no duplicity in me, almost. Yeah.
I could see I need a savior, and I need a meal, and I'm back to this, as opposed to, there's a lot for me to hide behind, and it doesn't really feel like I need a savior because I have a lot of stuff that I could provide for myself.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Thanks for being on the show.
No,
it was
man,
really good to talk to you.
It was fun, man. Yeah. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the espresso. It was really good.
You're welcome. Yeah. So just again, you didn't ask me to promote it, of course, but just Vagabond. Can you put that top link? Cool. People can check you all out and donate and
Thanks, man.
And become missionaries if that works. Cool.
Yeah, man. Thanks. It's great to be on the show. Great to be buddies. Great to see my table in action.
Yeah. All right. Thanks a lot.
Peace, brother.